Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our live today again. I want to thank you, and hopefully, you will be joining the live shortly. Today, we are tackling one of the most critical questions in the hemisphere. After Maduro, who really controls Venezuela? And is the country on the brink of a civil war? The situation is tense, the stakes are high, and the consequences could ripple across the entire Caribbean. Well, I don't have to tell anyone now that we are in the throes of a post Maduro era in Venezuela. And maybe we can call it the end of a century, right? Because the end of an era, I should say. Maybe after Cuba has been fully collapsed, but we know that Cuba is going to be next after Venezuela. So this is almost like the end of an era. And the other day when Mr. What's his name again? Mr. Patrick Wood came and he spoke about technocracy. We are living in real technocracies. And we have to understand that our nation states are no longer public. They're more private. They're like corporations and people make money, right? From the arms that they sell, the drugs that is trafficked through these countries, and so forth and so on. Now, Mr. Pereira will be joining us very shortly, and he will be giving his views, his opinions on what he believes is going to be post-Maduro, the post-Maduro era. Now, the papers here, we have a paper from the USA Time, the USA Today, and Trump's invasion is absurd. Nobody asked for this. That is what the writer here is saying. President Trump didn't ask Congress permission to take military action against Venezuela and haul away the South American nation's president to stand trial in the United States. But which recent president has ever asked the United States or has ever asked Congress for permission to go to war? In recent times, the presidents of the United States have not been asking Congress to go to war. They go there and they do whatever they want to do. And afterwards, Congress is apprised. And I believe that Congress is just a talk shop, just like CARICOM, right? They're just there and they will shout and they will scream just to make us believe that they are doing their jobs when they are really not doing their jobs. And many of them are in cahoots with what the presidents are doing, successive presidents are doing. He also importantly didn't ask your permission. There was no effort to garner or gauge public support for this likely illegal endeavor. You and I and all US citizens were simply told, as Trump said January 3rd, that America is going to run Venezuela for a while. We're going to run the country, is what Trump is saying, until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition, Trump said in the wake of the attack. So Trump is now saying that the United States is going to run Venezuela until they find somebody who can take over. Well, he's already declaring that Maria Corina Machado is not respected according to him, and she's not popular, so he's not going to put her in that capacity. And Maria is calling for Gonzalez, I think is Enmundo Gonzalez, to be the president, the one who they said that he won Nicolás Maduro in 2024, and afterwards he fled to Spain and has been hiding in Spain for some years now. So she's suggesting that he be returned to the country and to continue as president, or to pick up the pieces as president of Venezuela. Whatever happened, we know that there are betrayals on many fronts, right? And somebody wrote me today on the video I published that obviously it is Venezuelans who betrayed Maduro, but it was just a multiplicity of people who betrayed him: countries, diplomats, military guys, governments, okay, who betrayed him. And that is why we can't always depend on people and think that they're going to hold our back. A lot of times they're just there and they pretend. And if there's business, in the case of Russia and China, they were selling Venezuela arms, right? So the fact of the matter, they weren't just helping Venezuela out of humanitarian efforts, right? They were helping Venezuela because it was a business, right? Just like the United States do. That's what it does. What it does, it sells you arms, okay? And when it sells you arms, it gets enormous amount of money. Okay, enormous amount of money. So this is what we have to look at. This is not just about humanitarian efforts. They're there to help you. They're there to ward off enemies. That is not what it is all about, right? It's about business, and that is what the Russia and China, I believe, were doing. Now, at the end of the day, remember now that while that whole saga was going on, Trump and all of these guys were meeting, the Putins and the Xi Jinpings. Now, don't you think they will be having secret discussions and secret negotiations with them behind the scenes? Yes, and they're going to make compromises because that is what businesses do and business efforts do, right? So we always think in terms of that our leaders are representing us, and many times they're not. I would say that 98% of the times they're not, right? It's a business, and if they can eke out business and sometimes make compromises in which they give up our liberties or they betray us, that is exactly what they do. And I was expecting this to happen. I did not expect, I must say, how clean an effort it was that Trump was able to go inside and was able to get Nicolás Maduro out without batting an eye. It was so cleanly done, and so, no sort of lots of casualties. I understand there were 40 casualties. I'm not sure if that is true. But the fact of the matter is, I'm happy that many people did not die as a result of the intervention, right? The invasion, you would say, of the president. What I found very interesting, and I'm looking at some TikTok images of President Maduro in New York, and it's almost like he's walking and limping. And I'm wondering if he was hurt. Did they hit him? Did they do something to him? I'm not sure. But his appearance doesn't look like somebody who is very healthy. He was just walking and limping along in the airport, outside of the airport, or when he exited the aircraft and when he was being chauffeured to the prison, to jail. Now, we are looking at a time in which we must carefully assess whether or not, when we elect a president of our countries or individual countries, are they going to be able to, what should I say now, to carry on as we want them to do, or will they now have to accede to United States pressure? And the fact of the matter is, that's what Venezuela is teaching us. That if our presidents and prime ministers do not accede to US's demands and requests, they now can be taken out. Because that is what Rubio is saying. He's saying that he had given Nicolás Maduro options, including that he should have left. And we heard that before, that he had spoken to Trump, and Trump told him that he would have allowed him to leave safely, he and his wife and children, to another country. I'm not sure if it was Russia. It was one of those European countries, right? And President Maduro did not, comply. So what Maduro is suggesting, not Maduro, what is it Maduro? Not Maduro. The guy, the Secretary of State. What's his name again? Rubio, Marco Rubio. What Marco Rubio was suggesting is that he was behaving like a big boy. So now they had to treat him now like a little boy, because they had to take him out because he did not want to accede and comply with U.S. demands. And Rubio is saying that had he left Venezuela when Trump had asked him to do so, then he would have been happily living in another country. Can you imagine? Right. Somebody's saying here the CIA successfully infiltrated Midas in a circle. That's why the operation was so successful. Yeah, but it had to be that they had a great information, Lorenzo, that they were able to just go into the guy's apartment, his house, his residence, right? And just get him like that so easily, when he should have had bodyguard. And it doesn't seem like there was any attempt to defend him. When you think about 50 million US dollars that was on the bounty of Nicolás Maduro's head, you must understand that that was an incredible amount of money. And when that was first introduced, I was saying that that was the end of Nicolás Maduro. $50 million is a lot for people who are living, of course, in third world countries, a country right now as poor. It wasn't always poor because it's oil rich. The only thing, because of the sanctions that the United States had placed on Venezuela, it ended up in a very poor situation. So anybody there, including in his military, bodyguards, etc., and even members of his team, his administration, would be tempted to betray him because that's a lot of money. So let us say that they're giving you $50,000 out of that money. Many people would say, yeah, I'm going to accept that $20,000 and probably vacate. Maybe they say, okay, we'll give you a visa or we'll send you to another country and you can go and live on that whatever amount of money that they're giving. So this was something that was really set up, and I think that there was betrayal on every side, on Venezuelan side, on the Russian side, on the Chinese side, in his government, military, or everything. I think that there was betrayal on every side, on every front. That is because his security detail was bought off with CIA money. Yes, but the fact of the matter is that the other countries also have intelligences, like China and Russia. But what was happening is that, as you're saying too, the intelligence agencies, because what happened in Iraq and what happened in Afghanistan, they weren't able to go in as quickly, even though Afghanistan is mountainous, so that's why perhaps they weren't able to do it as cleanly as they'd done in Venezuela. But people were saying that Venezuela had jungles, right, and areas in which it was going to be very a landscape that would have been very difficult to have maneuvered. And for them to just go there. But what I heard Trump say, though, he said that he turned off the electricity. Did you hear that? Trump said that he actually used cyber warfare, right? And they turned off the electricity in Caracas. So it means, therefore, in minutes, Caracas was there in the dark for a while, and that is why they were able to move through. So when we're thinking about the enormous amount of influence and the enormous amount of technologies that the United States can use against us, but certainly I am sure that with the radar system that they had across the region, one in Trinidad, in Tobago, I think that the one that they recently installed in Tobago, they were saying that they were able to view parts of Caracas from Tobago with that newly installed military equipment. The CIA is currently doing the same thing in Iran with the protests, correct? Because if you notice, Lorenzo, after the invasion and they took out Maduro, we're seeing now all of a sudden in Venezuela, lots of people in Caracas, crying and saying, we love what the United States is doing. We love that. And is that they're hailing this as a success, as something that they had looked for or looked towards, right? So you're correct that the CIA is doing this, and it's a CIA operation without a doubt. Remember now that we were told that the CIA were on the ground from last year, right? And the special forces were there from last year. So they would have checked the terrain and they would have looked at the landscape and they would have been dialoguing with people in the government and on the streets and wherever. Even perhaps some of the diplomats in Venezuela, in Caracas, would have betrayed President Maduro. Okay, but the fact when they announced that $50 million bounty on his head, I said that his days were counted, right? And Trump actually doubled it. Remember, it was 25 million under Biden, and Trump came in from 25 million to 50 million. I said, wow, his days are counted, right? And to be frank with you now, many people are going through economic disasters, right? So if they're getting some money, even though they know what they're doing is wrong, okay, they are going to take the money and do what they want to do. Many people are not going to, even family members, We have to be very careful now in the days in which we live, because people are going through very severe economic crises, and people will accept money for betrayal, right? They will betray you. Now, one of the things that I find that is very interesting is that we're seeing this, and and it seems to me that nothing is going to happen. It's like there's not going to be any war. Some people are saying that things are very calm in Trinidad, and perhaps they are for now. We hope that they will be so forever, but I doubt it. Know that for that has secured the oil in Venezuela, they will go after Iran. Yes, they're going to go after Iran. And notice what they're doing, Lorenzo. And that's why I published a video on the connection between what is happening in Nigeria and Trinidad and Venezuela. Because what the US is doing now, it's distracting all of these other powers, Iran, Russia, China. So China is going to be distracted with Taiwan. Russia is already distracted with Ukraine, with the Ukraine, and Iran now is distracted with her own war. So when the United States does that now, guess what happens? They can't really come together, pool their efforts against doing anything, defending any other territory. So Iran is going to be consumed with war. Russia can't help, right? Because Russia is in the Ukraine. And the same thing, China is going to be consumed with war. China is where? Is consumed with war in Taiwan. Okay, so that is what is definitely happening, and we have to be on the lookout for that. Okay, we have to be on the lookout for that. Now, based on Trump's recent polling numbers, few are happy with the way he's running our country, this article is saying, and how he thinks he can hand another one for a bit as well. Now, one of the things too I'm looking at and is how everybody is talking about this is a Trump effort. And it's almost like we forget what, President Bush did, what President, Obama did in terms of economic sanctions and saying that Venezuela was a state sponsor of terror, right? We have forgotten what these presidents have done and what, Trump in his first term did too. Okay, so these are the things that we have to look at, we have to examine, and we cannot just look at this as from a mere Trump perspective. We have to look at it from the perspective that this is the war of an empire, of the US empire, and Trump, give him his credit now, I am not for Trump, but he did say in the document, that in the National Security Strategy document, that the United States should control the Western Hemisphere. And what he just did in Venezuela, he's now sending a message to the region that this is the Don Roe doctrine, and that anybody who does not accede to US demands and wishes will face a similar plight as what has happened to Venezuela. And somebody's asking me, will the United States be there? Will Trump be there forever? Well, Trump is not going to be in the office forever. Trump is going to be leaving office in the next 2 years. So it's not the Trump that is going to be there. It's the US empire that is going to be ruling Venezuela for a long, long time. Okay, and that is what we've got to understand, that it will be ruling Venezuela for a long, long time. Okay, now the president is fulfilling zero promises, and now he seems to have marched America into a costly occupation of a foreign country, limply suggesting that Venezuela's oil will help pay for everything. And this is what is interesting. President Trump is suggesting that the money that he is going to use, he's going to be investing money into these oil companies. But guess where is this coming from? From taxpayers. So the taxpayers are the ones who are going to, American taxpayers that is, have to rebuild the oil infrastructure in Venezuela, because he says that they can use their money, and he will compensate them. And you know where that compensation is coming from taxpayers. So this war is going to send, or this intervention, whatever you want, invasion, is going to cause ripple effects, not only in the Caribbean and Latin American region, but also to U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens will suffer. They will suffer because they will have to take on the cost of the war, of the invasion. And I don't think this is over yet. I don't think this is over. And I saw this military guy, Venezuelan military guy on TikTok, and he was saying that it's not over. He said that it's not over because they're going to fight. They're going to fight. And when we see how it has happened so abruptly, I think that many people were taken off guard. And that is why people are telling me, oh, it was so clean, because people were taken off guard. They never thought. I think many of them were surprised to see how quickly, how rapidly the thing took place. And what we're seeing now, it seems to me that the United States is changing strategy, and it's offering now money, paying out money to, well, it has always done that, but it seems like it's offering even more sums of money from taxpayers who will have to pay for that anyway, right, to these countries so that they can betray their leaders. That is what I'm seeing that is happening, that is taking place right now. Lauren says, if Donald Trump tries to occupy Venezuela, he will have a Vietnam 2.0. Remember now, people keep on saying Vietnam 2.0. In Vietnam, they did not want to end the war in Vietnam. They know that. It was because of America's protests. So we think that America lost the war in Vietnam, which from a public's perception, she did. From our perspective, from the warmongers, they did not lose. And that is what we have to understand. Let me just be very clear now. The warmongers who are providing their military, gears and assets and all of that, they love wars. They breathe wars, right? The only reason, and you can go back to the history and read it, the only reason why the Americans stopped the war in Vietnam was because people, unlike what we're seeing now, Americans are now brain dead, right? Americans are by now, they're not brain dead. But back in the 60s and so on, and before, Americans had a brain and they would read more widely. We are now on TikTok and people are not reading and they don't know their history. And people protested in the 1960s. And that is how, so they brought the pressure on the president. Okay? And at that time, the presidents could not really openly do what they're doing now, right? They did it, but they did it in secret. Now they can openly do it without any consequences at all. So let us be clear here now that Vietnam 2.0, the US doesn't care about casualty even for its soldiers and for people who might die. What it cares about is money. Right, and that's why they're waging. They can't wait for another war to begin, because the contractors. Because I did make a video. I'm not sure if I published it on my Rumination or Caribbean and Latin American news channel now, but I published a video in which I was telling you guys that all the military contractors are in Venezuela, right, and they're there to make money. So you have the military contractors, have the oil companies who are there, which are there now, and they are trying to make money from the state. And some people are suggesting that the oil companies are going to rebuild the infrastructure. And I asked a question today on one of the persons who commented. I said, do you think the United States is actually building its infrastructure there? Do you think the oil companies are building the weak infrastructure right now of the United States? No, they're not. They will build the infrastructure that will aid them to make more money, right? But they're not going to build the infrastructure to enrich the people so that their lives will be better. And that is what we have to understand. This is a complete corporate state now, as of now, and Venezuela will be treated as such. A corporate state that is just there to make profits. Now, when America is very casualty averse, when they lose enough soldiers, they will back down. No, they will not. That's the whole thing. They will not. They don't care about the loss of soldiers. They get more. Remember, what you have to understand is that most of the American soldiers are soldiers that are coming from very poor background, and what they do, they give them incentives. Many of them would not have the incentives of what they offered them, and they, connive them. They're coming from some of the deep rural South, right? Just read and you'll see. So they're not concerned about the casualty, American casualties. They pretend to be for the American state to sort of quell Americans' anger, but they don't care about losing the war in terms of losing lives. What they care about is this money making us money, making us money. Notice that Trump has also unmasked the whole matter of wars in America. He came and said that, why did you go to Iraq and you didn't get all of the oil? Right? He's there for what natural resources they have, even if soldiers die. If their American soldiers die, once they get the profit and the natural resources, that's a win for the United States. Because remember that the United States is a technocracy. It's a corporate state, and that is what it is. Nothing for the people, right? There's not going to be anything for the people of Venezuela, right? I'm not saying now that a few people won't get jobs, right? There are people who work in the oil sector, the oil industry, and they might do well, right? But it's not going to be for the majority of the people. So let's now be very clear on this. It's not I'm saying now that some people it will not be trickled down. Some of the wealth will not be trickled down to some select people. But for the most part, it won't be trickled down to the majority of Venezuelans. That is why Donald Trump, Lorenzo, that's why Donald Trump prefers special forces grab and go operations so they don't lose soldiers. Well, the loss of soldiers is just a perception that people think that he has lost the war because by losing. Because Donald Trump is just about perception, right? And that is what Rick Scott was saying the other day on the I think it was Judge Napolitano's show. He was saying that Trump is about perception, nothing more. So when they lose soldiers, the perception is that America has lost the war. And Trump doesn't want even the perception that they have lost the war. But he understands, Trump knows that within the inner circle, they don't care about deaths. What they are more concerned about are they getting the return on their investment, right? Because remember, it takes a lot of money to invest in wars, and they do invest in war. So they expect now to get the return on their investment. Okay, I'm not now saying I'm making a distinction between the oligarchs and the people. The American people are concerned about the casualty, and that's why they have to present this sort of front that yes, we care about the loss of soldiers to the American public, but to the oligarchs, they don't care about the loss of human lives, whether civil people lives or lives of the military. They don't care, right? Why do you think many soldiers, or I shouldn't say many, but some soldiers speak out like Smedley Butler? Read his book, That War is a Racket. Read that book. And other soldiers, American soldiers, have come out and said, we are not going back to any war, because at the end of the day, these presidents don't care. They're just sending us to just be guinea pigs. Right? So they know. And that is why you see many soldiers in the United States now, even today, they don't have the care that they should be getting having fought wars for the United States. The United States does not treat a lot of its veterans in a decent manner, because to them, after they've used them, they don't care. And that is what we have to understand. Look at how they treat their veterans. And that is to tell you that they don't really care. We have here that Dominican Republic helped them kidnap, including right. Both of them helped. And that's what I was saying, that it came from many fronts. It came from countries, diplomats, world powers, the government of Maduro, and the opposition. So I think that people betrayed him from all fronts. On all fronts, he was betrayed by these people. And that is why they got him. But, when you read history, it's a history of betrayal, right? Kings and queens have been betrayed by their own people, right? So we understand that this is nothing new. It's just that when it happens when we're alive, and it's really bothering. It's really concerning to see that people can be so, hypocritical, and they will betray you at any given time. Then we have here is, and now the weapons they use. Oh, sorry, did I have it? And now the weapons. And now the weapons. Why is it not coming? Show. Okay. And now the weapons they use are so precise that fewer soldiers are required to fight. Yeah. And if they don't have to, because they understand too that when the soldiers fight and if they don't die and they have to take care of them, then it's better for them not to have all these soldiers, and they have to return veterans and you take care of them. The US doesn't want to do that too. That's another thing, reason why they don't want all these soldiers on the ground. Because when they have to pay for it, right? And sometimes they have to pay for some of their injuries, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if the fewer soldiers they can have on the ground, the better for them. And that's why they're using our drones. And very soon, these AI things that we don't know what they're developing with AI are going to cause some, some of you don't believe what the Bible says, but it said the Bible talks about the mark of the beast and that he shall cause fire to come down from heaven. Now, when you think about the fire coming down from the skies, man might not be able to do it, but with the AI that they're now using, anything is possible. Because I look at the internet sometimes, don't you? And you see some images coming from on the internet from the wild, from different places, and you really wonder if this is true, right? Have you seen these images on the internet? And the AIs that you don't know what is real from unreal, and that is something we will have to battle with for a long time. Now, Lorenzo is saying that is true about the elite, but Donald Trump still loves public opinion. Yes, he loves both. Donald Trump loves both because Donald Trump is money. At the end of the day, he is about money, right? He doesn't really care. Anybody who doesn't care about human lives is with Donald Trump. He doesn't care once he's earning it. But he also, remember, he has his MAGA base, and his MAGA base, they actually voted him on the platform that he would choose America first, and he would not be engaged in many wars. Now, he's engaged in the wars, but he wants not to have many casualties, because if he does, then he's going to upset his base. And they might not vote for the Republican Party in the next election, because with the way in which Donald Trump is behaving now, I believe the Republican Party is going to win again in 2028. I believe if he continues on this trajectory of giving the perception, not the reality now, giving the perception that he is making the world a safer place and combating drugs and other things and being a president of law and order, and without sending troops, a lot of troops to these countries to war, I think that he is going to, Americans are going to be fooled, and they're going to elect whatever Republican candidate. I don't think Trump is going to run again. He's too old. It is, Lorenzo saying, it is hilarious how Trump has thrown Machado on. Right. You're right. That is a point I would like, Lorenzo, that is a great point. It's amazing how he has thrown her under the bus. That could not have been said better, because we would have thought that he was going to put her in the presidency, because I think, no, this is just, what do you call it now? Not projection, but speculation. I'm speculating here. It's not anything that I can prove. But I think that Trump was the one who was going to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he gave her as a motivating factor so that she could work to get Maduro out. And notice that after she left Venezuela and she went to accept her Nobel Peace Prize, Trump started, he aggressively building up the war. The war effort started building up, accelerated the building up effort to the war. And it came to that point where now Maduro is out. So you're right. You're correct here that he has thrown her under the bus. Don Shelley is saying they even have weapons which can dissolve bones and flesh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If they can use us less, just like how you go to a corporate entity and they don't want to, AI can write very soon AI robots, as you're saying, Don Shelley, will be fighting. Machines are the ones who are going to do, and they just go and just start shooting and killing people. Right? That is where we are moving into the dangerous world that we are moving into right now. And the fact that the United States could have done something like that, they are going to do it again. Right? This is just the beginning of what the United States is going to do in terms of launching wars against people. Now, Trump never intended to put Machado in any position. Machado was delusional. Well, it's possible, but it's possible. He sounded like he wanted her to be the president, though. But the fact that he came, well, let us say he didn't want to put her in that position. He disrespected her by saying the people don't respect her. That's what he said. He said the people don't respect her and she's not a popular. I mean, he could have said she's not a popular person, but to say that she's not respected, that's sort of nice. It's not complimentary for somebody who has earned the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, not earned, but received it. Whatever, it was given to her, right? Then how can you say that she's not respected when the United States was instrumental in having her receive that award, that prize? So yes, he threw her under the bus in terms of what he said about her, that she's not very well respected in Venezuela, right? Even if that is true, the way how he said it, he wouldn't say that. He didn't say that before. Before Maduro came, he could have said, I like Machado, but I think that she would not be a suitable candidate if Maduro should leave, if and when Maduro leaves. Now, he didn't say that. He was always talking about her in a very glowing way, and she's a nice lady and all that stuff. Trump. I think Donald Trump would respect a person like Maduro than a Machado. He would use Machado. Yeah, if Maduro, Don Shelley, had acceded to Trump's demand and done what Trump wanted him to do, Trump would have worked with him. Because that's what Marco Rubio is saying. Marco Rubio is saying any prime minister, according to Marco Rubio, Trump is a nice guy. And he's willing to work with anyone who wants to work with Trump. And to work with Trump means that you do what Trump tells you to do. That is exactly what it means. So absolutely, if Maduro had acceded to Trump and his requests, his demands, he would have been in power. No doubt about that. It doesn't have to do about Maduro being evil and drug trafficker. Nothing to the sort. If Maduro had agreed with Trump, he would have been in office today. Lorenzo, I am convinced Donald Trump is the Antichrist. He literally has the Antichrist is, first of all, Donald Trump is not religious, and the Antichrist is going to cause the entire world to worship. Right, so it can't be Donald Trump because Donald Trump is a political figure, and he doesn't really represent a religious institution, right? So, therefore, it's not him. Nobody would be deceived, right? Remember, the Antichrist is somebody who will be deceived. Nobody is deceived by Donald Trump. We all know who Donald Trump is, right? And the fact that he can deceive no one. He is an open book, isn't he? Now let me go to Anne-Marie. Annie, not Anne-Marie, but Annie is saying Trump thought he would have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize also, but all of a sudden he also has no choice to be jealous of her. Well, I think he actually told them to give it to her because it's not something earned, Just like Obama got it, just as off the bat, Obama didn't do anything. When Obama came into the presidency, he received the Nobel Peace Prize. Because they wanted him to do what he was doing in Africa and other things that they wanted him to do. And he acceded that he was going to do it. Right? So if the powers that be wanted Maduro out and wanted Trump to bomb Iran or do whatever he's doing now, then they will give him the Nobel Peace Prize. It is not something that is earned. It's something that is just, you get it because they want you to do something. Maybe in the initial stages, it was earned, I don't know, but we know that in recent times, particularly after Obama, that it's not something that is earned. Because who would have given Obama a Nobel Peace Prize even before he entered officially, well, not before, but just into his baby days in the presidency? That was really not good. Now, we see, regardless of what the U.S. does, China has already won the race economically. Yes, could you tell me how she has won the race economically? Because one of the things is this by design? That's what we have to ask, because whose interests are in China? We have all of these large corporations in China. So what we're seeing now is global capital We're no longer seeing domestic capital, whether it's in Trinidad or it's in Barbados or it's in Jamaica or it's in the United States or China. People, they have their global capital and they work together. What I think is happening is that they are consolidating their power, and we are the ones who are going to be affected. Okay, so we can't trust any prime minister, president. We respect them because they are the leaders of our country, but we ought to look and to say, what, look and to look deeply, I should say, at what they are doing and not doing. Now, we have Venezuelan invasion is a part of the bigger picture to limit China's access to oil. But if that was the case, if that is the case, and I want to believe that too, Chris, but if that is the case, why didn't China do something to ward off the United States? If that's the case. Or is it that China and the United States behind the scene entered into an agreement in which China can receive its oil from Venezuela with President Maduro being out? I'm not saying that this is what is happening, but these are the questions. We can't look at things black and white right now. There are shades of gray that we have to look at. And I think I want to believe what you're saying, but now that China did not stand up, there was no sort of fight, right, in which we saw China and Russia defending Maduro. So it means, therefore, that maybe they had some agreement. I don't know. Could be. I'm just speculating here, not saying that I know. Annie is saying Marco Rubio and Trump have no right to decide whether Maduro stays or leaves his own country. But they have no right. But the fact of the matter is that the international people, the United Nations and all these people seem to have given them the right. Right? He has no right, but he has done it. And it doesn't seem like the United Nations is saying anything about it. Right? They're quiet. They're quiet. They're not going to say anything about it, or if they do, just words of, that amount to nothing. And he's saying, yes, but Trump thought he was going to get one also. Yes, I'm saying that he might have thought so, and maybe they were going to give it to him. But I think, in my speculation, I think he gave it to Maria because she was a CIA. She is a CIA asset, and she was the key person in Venezuela, which was putting a lot of pressure. Apart from the military buildup, she was putting a lot of pressure on him. And she's also bilingual, right? So she speaks English and Spanish fluently. So she was able to be used as an asset, a CIA asset, to get the president, to oust the president. I think China, Russia, and the US all cooperate. I think they do. Now, it doesn't mean, therefore, that they don't have disagreements and they don't have elements where they want to parts of the world where they want to control. They do, and they're fighting to be who is going to be the dominant force. They're all fighting in terms of who is going to be the dominant force that controls the world. However, when it comes on to the global elites and their money and their corporate interests, their economic interests, they do work together. And when you look at slavery also, and you see what happened between England and the United States, even after the United States had left England and all these countries in Europe, they were working together, They fought. But when it came on to slave interests, they worked together, right? When the Haitian slaves were actually fighting the French, the United States helped. Well, they sent... they did help the Haitians, I must say. And they only helped the Haitians then by selling them weapons because, one, they were making money, and they wanted the French out because the French was like a threat to the United States at that time. But the fact of the matter is that the Spanish helped the French, even though they were enemies, right, to fight off the Haitians. The English also helped the French, not because they really wanted to help the French, because they wanted Haiti too. And they were fighting for domination of that country, right? The wealthiest, colony in the Western Hemisphere then. So yes, they work together against us. And that is what we have to understand. We are the ones who need to understand that we have to demand freedom of our political leaders and not think that some superpower or some great power is going to give us freedom. The United States, when it was founded in 1776 officially, and it talked about freedom for all, did it really have freedom for all? No, it was freedom for the moneyed class, even though it had a beautiful constitution. But what it meant, it was freedom for the oligarchs, for the landowners. Okay? No, for the common man. Even the white common man was not somebody that the constitution meant was equal. Right? It was under the presidency of Jackson. What's his first name? That actually they actually made all whites be able to, they gave them the suffrage, right? So we must understand that they're working together. All right. Donald Trump wanted to make a deal with Maduro, but Marco Rubio was the one pushing regime change. Yeah, the deal that they made with him, and I think Marco Rubio agreed, was for him to leave. And they do it all the time. When the Trujillo of the Dominican Republic was here to as a dictator, even though he was their dictator, the United States told him that he could go to Spain, and they would allow him to carry his assets and everything that he had. Well, the money and whatever. They would allow him, right? And he said no. And eventually they came and they took him out, and he was, killed. Right? So they often do this. They will give you this by telling that you need to leave. And if you don't leave now, that is where the problem lies. So I think that Marco Rubio wanted regime change. Trump wanted regime change too. Remember now that Trump wanted regime change from 2016. It was because Marco Rubio he wants regime change for Cuba, and Marco Rubio wants regime change for Nicaragua also. So he pushed Trump to make it first for Venezuela, because they know that Venezuela was like the economic engine, right, for Cuba. So if they can take away that economic engine, then Cuba is going to be weaker, and very soon they will be able to go after Cuba. So it was a very strategic move. But from 2016, Trump wanted regime change in Venezuela. Right? But he was not as aggressive as he came in now under Rubio, and I agree with that. Cuba is the next country on Marco Rubio's. It's the next country, because that is where his parents are from, right? And he has been carrying grudges for years, and I'm sure his parents told him about the revolution, and he's been trained for that. And today I was reading from the USA Today also that Trump was the first candidate in America's as president of the United States, as a presidential candidate of the United States, to have received monetary contributions from the Bay of Pigs association in Florida. Right? So for a long time, they have been waiting patiently for this regime change, and Marco Rubio was the person. And I think he was strategically placed there, because remember that he and Trump were not always friends, but the supporters in Florida of Trump, the Cubans, they made sure that they had him put Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, because that's exactly what he's doing. And with that being done, if Cuba is next, and if they're successful with destroying that regime in Cuba, that communist regime in Cuba, I think that Marco Rubio stands a good chance of becoming president or vice president in the next run, in the next election. Yes, I think that he would. So we're seeing some very interesting dynamic. I thought Mr. Pereira was, I think Papizi would have been here by now, but maybe he decides not to come. Yes, but the fact of the matter is that we are seeing that this is where we are now in terms of it's not a war. Well, it's a war in the sense that if somebody comes and take out your president, right, or your prime minister, it is war. Right? This is not just something that you just come and take out. And what I saw is that they don't even allow him to leave with a nice shirt and a nice pants on, even though he is no longer president. But my God, he was president for many years in Venezuela. He was just there in his pajamas and the sandals with socks, and he was walking and limping. And I'm like, wow, couldn't they have shown him some respect? Right? As at least the former president of Venezuela, right? And I wonder how the Venezuelans think about it. Whether or not you like him, I don't think that they should have, they treated him the way they treated him in terms of what he was in. He could have been better clad, but they decided that they wanted to make him, as Marco Rubio said, he was behaving like a big boy, so they wanted to treat him now as a little boy, right? And that is what really happened to Nicolás Maduro. Now, what do you think? Okay, let me get some more comments. Oh, they have a lot of comments here. San is saying, I agree with that. Already Trump saying who gets what. Yes. Trump, Russia has Europe, China has Asia, and USA has the Caribbean region. So I agree that China, Russia, and USA have a deal. I don't think Trump he's saying that now, San P, that he's going to give it. That's what he's saying, but that's not true. I think America wants to rule the world. Notice that America is suggesting too that they want that place there in Denmark. Well, it's not in Denmark. Is it in Denmark? I don't think it's owned by Denmark. What's it called again? That green, whatever it's called again. I can't remember that name. That island there in Europe. Logistics of China and Russia defending Venezuela is too long. They're too far away to be effective. Well, the fact is that they have what you call it now, interests. They have economic investments in Venezuela. So one would have thought that they would want to, to protect their interests. But as we're saying, they can protect it without protecting Nicolás Maduro. And that is what we have to also separate, that they can protect their interests without protecting the president or the people. All right? That is what we have to. I don't think we have yet begun to separate the interests. Okay, that they can, because not that Nicolás Maduro has left, doesn't mean that China has not protected and Russia have not protected their interests. Perhaps they have. To this day, they work together, the UK, USA, and Europe. Yeah, I think that the Europe is under the, they do what the United States tells them to do. Notice that with Venezuela, they have not said anything that it's not something that should have been done. It's against international law. So Europe really is, they are, what should I say now, satellite states of the United States of America. And everyone fighting for control of Africa. They're fighting for control of the entire world, right? They're fighting for control, particularly those nation states that have resources, packed with resources like Venezuela, the Ukraine, right? And all the Nigeria, all of these, Burkina Faso, all of these African countries, Asian countries that have a lot of resources, they are fighting for control. Because remember now that the only way you can be the global superpower is if you control the resources or most of the resources of the world. Andrew Jackson, right, you're correct. Andrew Jackson was the person. You're correct. Then we have China, Russia, Europe, USA are now fighting for control of Africa. And we're saying that they're all fighting for control of the entire world. Another surprise was the continued silence of the Caribbean leaders. I had hoped that they would be working in the background, trying to do something disappointed. Now, I think that they were on the side of Kamala. I think that Andrew Holness and all of these people were on the side, most of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but I think that most of our prime ministers were on the side of Kamala and the United States. The only thing is that Kamala had the backbone. I can think she was more consistent, with what she believed, so she was able to, to do what she did without any sort of embarrassment. But I think the others were silently behind her, but they made public statements that pretended as if, because if you notice, they always say, well, while we do not agree with Mrs. Kamala Person-Processor, but we believe that people are their sovereign nation and they should be able to do what is in their best interest. They kept on saying that, right? But they only said that for public consumption, for us to believe that they want us to live in a zone of peace. But when you look at what Andrew Holness did, Miss Mia Motley of Barbados with Haiti, and they're talking about the war against gangs, right? And this is a war on drugs, right? So connect the dots. You have the war on drugs under the Trump administration, and you had the war against gangs, or the war on gangs under the Biden administration, under the Democrats, No, it's the same, right? It's the same sort of agenda they have, control, right? And that is what we see happening in Haiti and what eventually happened in Venezuela. They're savages, aren't they? We have Greenland. Absolutely, Greenland is a place. Greenland is the place we are. Greenland is the place that we're talking. Greenland. So they're now saying that they're after Greenland now. Trump says that he has to get it. All right, and Europe and the European Union is not saying anything about it too. What can they say? All right, it's to tell us. It is to tell us that the United States is no ordinary power. And it's not because we want her to be that mighty. It is because we have to say that she's mighty. Is she going to fall? Yes, because there have been other mighty empires and they have fallen. But we have to understand that this is a US-led global, what should I say now? Global century, if you want to say that, if that's a word. Okay, this is where we are now. America has troops there, and I will never be surprised if Trump does not tell them to take it over. Right. Everybody does what America says, and that is what it is. They're afraid, and because they're afraid, because let us say now, if Trump wanted Mrs. Kamala Persaud-Besessar or Andrew Holness of Jamaica or Miss Mia Mottley of Barbados, if Trump wanted these presidents, do you think, our prime ministers rather, do you think they could have, staged a long time, wage a war for such a long time against Trump? No. At least Maduro had a military that could fight for a while, right? And he's been there. Give him his credit. He's been there for years. Give Nicolás Maduro his credit. His thing did not just go down overnight, right? This has been going on for the past 20-something years, 23 years. All right, so give Venezuela its due. They did fight. Right? We don't have any army to fight. Yeah. And then we have Lorenzo said Colombia, Panama, Mexico, Greenland, and Nigeria are in Trump. Well, already Lorenzo, he's in Nigeria, right? Remember, he has bombed Nigeria already. So the fact of the matter is that Nigeria is already there. China is going to secure Taiwan soon, right? So and this is what is happening, and that is going to get the United States also into a war with China, which might not be good. Because of the attack in Venezuela, Donald Trump stopped all flights from America coming to the Caribbean, and that is what Ms. Mia Mottley was saying when they asked her to comment. She said she didn't want to comment on the issue because she said Barbados has lost a lot of flights, tourists coming into Barbados. So this has really affected our economy. All right, this has affected severely our economy because flights were blocked coming into the Caribbean. Okay, so this is serious. This is something we should be taking lightly. And we don't know how long this is going to last. Things appear to be quiet now, but we don't know how long it's going to last. Isn't it ironic how an icy place like Greenland is called Greenland and Iceland, right? It's so Greenland, right? And it's called Iceland, correct? Yeah, you're right about that. So we are seeing now where our world is not the same place. It's just not the same place. It has always been that the United States gets its way, but every successive invasion, it changes the game. It ups the game in how it can create regime change. Now it's doing it in your face. And as I was listening to one of the geopolitical analysts, and he was saying that this was a spectacle. When you see how the jets went into Venezuela and flew over Caracas, it was like a spectacle, like everything was staged. That was his word. This was a staged performance. And they did it very well. And you really wonder if it was not made for a movie. Even Trump said it was made for a movie. It was like we were watching a movie. It was not really, it was like it wasn't real. It was unreal. They made a lot of money off our backs in the past, and they are trying to turn the clock back. Well, they're still making money off us through the deals of the IMF and other multilateral agencies to which we are affiliated, they are making loads of money, ton loads, even through tourism, right? They've come and they've taken away our lands and they put up these hotels on them and they are repatriating the wealth, the profits, to their own island, to their own jurisdiction. Imagine that Caribbean have no ships, planes, economy to protect itself. Right. Caribbean people have no ships, planes, economy to protect itself. Yeah, we can't protect ourselves. And that is why we give in to these world powers or military to protect itself. Right. We don't have any, we have some form. I'm sure Trinidad and Jamaica and perhaps Barbados have a weak military, but we don't have military to defend our homeland. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the money to invest in a military. They lack imagination on how to build their countries without attacking us. It's very difficult in terms of how we are going to override these powers. And we're so close to them. We're so close to the United States that it is going to be a tall order. Even though we criticize our prime ministers and presidents, it's going to be a tall order for them not to accede to U.S. demands. Very, very tall order. And remember now that most of our presidents, prime ministers are a part of secret societies, and they also have similar objectives as the world powers, right? They believe in the one world government and all of that stuff. And that is what I don't understand about people. We were talking about one world government for many years. We have been talking about that. And all of a sudden, people are talking about multipolarity because they have given you that to fill you up with this nonsense about multipolarity and to allow you to not think about what they're doing and seeing how they are putting this world into that one world governance. Because we think that it's going to be multipolarity and people will have different jurisdiction, and it's not going to happen. Because for years, for centuries, they have been planning this one world government. Yes, let me see this. We have this: international law does not exist anymore. Now it is might makes right. And I want to think that it was just a shadow. The United States did what it wanted to have done for years. The only thing is that it would have been a little bit more guarded. Now it is not at all guarded. It just does whatever it wants to do. And it says anything it wants to say. When you listen to Marco Rubio and Donald Trump after Maduro was taken out of office, you really wondered if these guys are Rambos, right? They were not speaking as diplomats, as the president of the United States. The language was so crude, right? It was not the most impressive of language that should be coming from men of high, bearing, of high status. It was not impressive at all with their use of language, At least now we can see, absolutely, we can see, and we are seeing that what they're doing. USA and Europe would not allow us to have a powerful military. That is why I think independence for Caribbean nations is really a sham. Well, remember now that we were not really independent. After World War II, England actually lost its empire, right? And they were weakened, just like when the United States eventually was weakened. They were weakened economically and in other ways, and they just had to give up the colonies. Right? So we were just given independence. We didn't earn it. We didn't work for it. They just told us that we had to go because they didn't want to be responsible for us. Because remember, when we were colonies, they would, take care of education, even though they were not doing a lot to take care of education, but they still had to bear expenses and they wanted to relieve themselves of such expenses. So all of this independence has always been a sham. Right? We have to earn. Caribbean people, we have to earn, like many Latin American countries, they fought. Haiti fought for its freedom. Dominican Republic fought for its freedom. Many other countries in Latin America fought for its freedom. I think the British Caribbean are the ones, probably are a few, who did not fight for freedom. So it's not freedom. It's not freedom, because the United States fought for its freedom from Great Britain, right? So we never fought for any freedom. That's why it's not freedom. And that is what we have to understand. Nothing that is not fought for is going to be long lasting or is real. It's not real. It's not real. If you have wealth and you haven't worked for it, it's not real. And it can go at any time. And the same thing with freedom. Now, Don Shelley is saying USA and Europe would not allow. Yes, I read that already. San P is saying at least we can finally see China's true self. Yeah, and Russia too. But I have never, and you probably can correct me. The Chinese people have never been. I have never seen them as people who are loyalists, who believe in certain morals. I just see them as a business people. The Chinese have always been, just like the Jews, they have always been business people. And they go wherever their interest is. They don't have any loyal friends. I've worked with them and done businesses with them, and that is how they are. And today they like you, and tomorrow you might be their enemies, right? They are not easy people to deal with. Put it that way. Anybody else remember the movie Terminator and is it Skynet? With those killer robots with AI technology seems similar. Yeah. We are seeing a world now that is in, in a crisis. It's in a crisis of great proportion. We are seeing a world, we're witnessing a world now that is in a crisis. Now, I am also thinking about Trinidad and Guyana. And I'm wondering with this now, the fact that Maduro is out, and the oil companies of the United States can now, Trump has given them access to Venezuela and told them to invest in the oil fields there, the oil and gas field. I'm wondering if Mrs. Persson-Becesar is going to be able to negotiate and get whatever she wanted. And will she get a similar deal as if she had actually inked out a deal with Maduro? I would like to know that. I would really like to know if the United States is going to give Mrs. Persson-Becesar a very generous, deal with the oil and gas companies there now I don't think so. I think that Maduro would have given Trinidad and Tobago a better deal. I think he would have. But let's not talk so early. What do you think? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think that she's going to be getting anything of substance for her country now that Maduro is out? Because that's the whole thing. She didn't want to sign the deal with Maduro. Well, the U.S. hadn't given her that permission, and now what we're seeing now is that the U.S. companies will be the owners and the shapers of the Venezuelan oil and gas fields. Do you think that Mrs. Persson-Becesar is going to be getting anything substantial from the deals with U.S. companies? What do you think? The crime and violence, we need to look at that too. Many Venezuelans are going to be fleeing, that's for sure, because the country is going to become insecure. The country is going, and people are going to be divided because it has not yet. I think that people are still traumatized. If we do not live in Venezuela, right, and we can be traumatized by what we saw, by what you and I saw on camera, on the television, can you imagine Venezuelans who live there? I think that they're still going through that trauma of what took place. And when it finally settles down and clears, when the dust is finally cleared, I think that is when you're going to see the upsurge in violence. I don't think the U.S. respects Kamala. I don't think she will be getting anything significant. Yeah, well, they don't respect anybody. They don't respect anybody. And Trump only respects anybody who he thinks is stronger than he is, richer, more powerful militarily, but he doesn't respect anybody in terms of, personality traits or being a person. Person does not have to. TNT has 27% of the mannequin, coquina, and the manatee field belongs to. Yeah, but if you notice, there were reports coming from the Trinidadian papers the other day that the war, in the whole matter of the build-up, the sort of tension in Venezuela was affecting the Trinidadian economy. It was affecting the Trinidadian economy. It came from the central bank of Trinidad. So it should tell you that all is not well with Trinidad. All is not well. And maybe Trinidadians are also going to realize after post-Maduro the truth of their economy and what is really happening. Because she had to give you this illusion of what is happening and whatever, thinking that Maduro was not necessary and all of that. But I think that the Trinidadian economy is in a bad shape. Well, just like many of us, in fact. But I'm just saying that if the two countries had come together united, that it would have been good for both economies, both for Venezuela and for Trinidad. Kamala may be looked upon as another Machado, right? I think he's going to spit her out, just like how they spat out Eugenia Charles of Dominica and also Edward Seaga of Jamaica, right? After the CIA used Mr. Seaga in Jamaica, they never returned. Well, he never was returned to power. After that, well, Mrs. Person, Miss Cesar is now going to. I guess she's looking forward to retire. So I don't think she cares. Now we have, look at the U.S. Black Israelites, Christians, Caribbean nations termed terrorists by, is it Reverend, who is this? Who infiltrate nations in churches. Which Revelation, Revelation 2 verse 9 said that people are terrorists? I never read that. And Revelation 3 verse 9 said they are terrorists. Yeah, could you clarify what you're saying there? TNT just made themselves a military target and an enemy of the Venezuelan people, right? That is what is going to happen. And not the Venezuelan people per se, Nicolás Maduro's loyalists, right? Because the Venezuelan people are not going to attack Trinidad, right? They don't have and would not do that. But people who are loyalists are the ones who, and the criminals who have been there. They're criminals there, right? And they are the ones who are going to now try to attack Trinidadians. Okay, so let's not play game right now. We know that there's some real criminals in just like in any part of the world, just waiting for the right time. We hope it doesn't happen. We hope it does not happen. But we're suggesting here that it's a possibility that when these things happen, that it will happen because of matter of retribution and retaliation. All right? Human beings do not like to be betrayed. Right? Human beings do not like to be betrayed. Even though we like to betray others. And that's very ironically, we don't like to betray, yet we betray others. So we have that. Let's see if crime, drugs, all of that is going to happen. It's going to pass through Trinidad. Then we have let me get here. What's going on here? Something, okay. Let's see if, I think I've been here before. So we have the next one is the Honorable Lady Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago will be the next one America froze and under the bus. I don't think she's going to. I don't think the United States is going to kick her out, unless she does something, which I don't think she's going to do. And she's on her way out to. How many years does she have in office? And I don't think she's going to be looking for a third or whatever term in office. So I think she's on her way out. I think she's been used. What I think her term might not end well. That I can say. I don't think that Mrs. Cesar's term might end well, because in terms of the economic situation, in terms of the lies that were told, and when all of these things begin to be unfolded, unmasked, I think a lot of Trinidadians are going to be really upset, because I think now the truth is going to come out, and many people are going to say, "Wow, didn't know that." Um, the thing about the USA talking about gangs is the same with AI, Al Qaeda, and Boko Haram are all paid by the United States, UK, and French. So no, the insurgent gangs and so on will not stop. Right? It will not stop. It will not stop. In fact, it always gets worse. And that's what we learned in Iraq. Al Qaeda and all these people, these insurgents, they were under the dictator's control in Iraq, under Saddam Hussein's control. Under his regime, there was a lot of violence in Iraq, right? And after they took him out, after the United States took him out, then all of the violence started to be unleashed, not only on Iraq, but right throughout the world, including in the Western world. They went as far as Europe, right? And look at how close Venezuela is to Trinidad and to Guyana. So we know that it will. They're going to go to other countries too. Don't get me wrong. They can end up as far as Jamaica and other countries. But we know that in Trinidad, who is so close, that they are going to get a lot the brunt of it. We have here, the Ashkenazis in Revelation, they designate Black Israelites in U.S. as domestic terrorists. And where did you get your interpretation from? I mean, the Bible doesn't even talk about blackness. It talks about cultures and countries. It talks about Ethiopia, but black is a recent terminology by the United States and the European countries, right? I think it was invented in the 17th century. All right, so the Europeans are the ones who came up with blackness and whiteness. Nobody's really black and nobody's white. All right, we are all different shades of brown, right? Some are lighter than some, but nobody's white, nobody's black, and science proves that. In fact, there was a British geneticist who said that if then you have black people, then we're all black because all of us came from Africa. That's what he said. If we are talking about black people, then all of us are black because we all came from Africa. And I think that, archaeologists and the biblical account is really real, that, civilization, came from Africa, started in Africa, at least on the African continent, right? So then I think we're all made. The Bible teaches that we are all made of one blood. All nations, he has made all nations on the world to dwell, and that we're coming from of one blood, right? So you don't have European blood and African blood. Yes, we have different genetics, and nothing is wrong with that, sad, because we have moved to different territories, different environmental factors and so forth influence how we look, right? But when you cut us, it was what's his name again? The black neurosurgeon. I can always forget his name. What's his name again? The black neurosurgeon who was running. He was in Trump's administration also. Ben Carson. Right. It was Ben Carson who said when he was a neurosurgeon that it was after he had opened up the brain and put back the person together that he realized who was black from white, because there's no difference. Right? No difference between a black man and a white person. Culturally, we are different, don't get me wrong, because we have, one lives in Africa, the other lives in, just like Asians are different from, and all that stuff. But all of these blackness, white thing are superficial arguments. Revelation 2 verse 9 and 3 refer to S of Satan. When we get our own platform outside of YouTube, this can be discussed. It is extremely important for the Caribbean to know about Revelation 2 verse 9 and 3. Yeah, we could talk about that. Marie Antoinette, we have to speak of this topic in a very coded way. Now, what do you mean by a coded way? What do you mean a coded way? It's a mystical way. The Bible says revelation. So revelation does not mean, if it's not what you want coded, it means, Dr. Ben Carson, it means open, right? The Bible does use, the revelation uses a lot of symbols, but just like poetry, when you read poetry, if you understand the era, the culture, and of when the poet was talking and what it symbolizes, then you're able to, unmask what the poet is saying. The Bible is the same thing, uses lots of symbols, but if you understand the culture, the history, the whatever, you will see and you can put things together. We have here black is in Job 30 verse 30. My skin is black upon me. US FBI says blacks Israelites are US domestic terrorists to wipe or genocide them out of existence. Genesis 10 has bloodline nations. See Obadiah. The Bible doesn't talk about, as I'm saying, it's very clear that the Bible talks about that we have been created in the image of God, and that is how we came about. Now, after the after the what you call it, the flood, and people want to come, they want to build after Noah's flood, and they want to build a one world government there in the Tower of Babel. People wanted to come together against God. God scattered them across the earth. And that is how you find people going speaking different languages. Because once the world spoke one language, you know that? And even those who are atheists and they're linguists, they say that it is the only way we know how these languages came about, these different languages, is through the story of Babel's account. Outside of that, and that's why it was called the story of Babel, or the Tower of, not the story, but the Tower of Babel, because they were always speaking in unknown language, and eventually they didn't understand what each other was saying, so it was all confusion, right? But make no bones about it, it's the same thing. You see, all humans have the same thing, right? One nose, two eyes, a brain. The European brain is not different from the African brain. And so when we create these differences, then we are going to find ourselves separating and creating divisions, and we can't pull together to fight against the global elites. And the global elites also are, some of them are the ones framing these divisionary tactics to divide the human population so that they can take us and rule us and control us. So we have to be very careful. I'm not saying that they're not divisions, and we should speak out against racial, ethnic, cultural, linguistic divisions. However, we must not bring them too far in terms of suggesting that we alone can do this and we don't need the other person. All of us need each other to survive. All right, the Asian need Africans, African need Asians, Europeans need, we all, and God has given us different talents, and different things exist in different parts of the world that we need. Right? And that is, but what we see these global elites doing, they're going and arresting these things and saying that they own it, and it's not, it should not be. People should be owning their resources, right? And that is now where I stand out, and I will say I agree with you. But let's not create divisions and think that we can live without each other, because without we can't. And it is God's intention that people should live in different parts of the world, and they look different, and they speak different languages, diversity. We have currently the United States is spending $10 million a day on each. It's 18 million, Lorenzo. It's 18 million. And maybe it's more now, because when I read that sum, Lorenzo, it was like maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago I read that. So, and afterwards they send more ships and assets there. So it could be now 25 million. I don't know. But the time I read it, and maybe 2-3 months ago, it was then 18 million. So you can see, you can understand that. Plus, I'm sure with the invasion that they did there the other day in Venezuela, capturing the president, they must have spent huge sums of money, because it was a cyber attack too. As I was telling you, Trump said it, that he used cyber whatever equipment, whatever logistics, to turn off the power, to turn off the electric power in Caracas, right? For some time, he said they were in darkness. That's what he said. So that is how they were. So it must have costed them huge sums of money to have undertaken such a very, I don't know. It's almost looked unreal, I should say. It looked unreal and looked staged, I must say, event. Right? So yeah, for people who don't understand, it cost the United States $18 million per to have the military per day, to have those military assets in the Caribbean. All right. Now let me have you ask some questions. Now I've been talking. I want you to make some more comments. What do you think Who is going to rule Venezuela? Do you think Venezuela is going to be in a civil war? Do you think that there is going to be any civil war soon in Venezuela? Do you think there's going to be a civil war in Venezuela anytime soon? Or do you think that it will end here? The fact that they have, calmly gone into Venezuela and taken out the president, do you think that's the end of it? And we'll now go back to peace and will remain in our zone of peace, as the prime ministers of the CARICOM nations suggested. What do you think will happen? No comment on that. No comment on what you think in terms of the civil war. What about China? Do you think China has any role, or do you think the United States? Okay, let me see some of your comments here. What we will see, TNT, is a lot of the sabotage on its key resources and infrastructure. Maduro made plans before the kidnap. The U.S. actually didn't get what it wanted. They just saving face. Now, what do you think the United States wanted, O. Smith? I think they got what they wanted. I think the United States got what it wanted. They wanted Maduro to be out and the United States to control Venezuela. And I think that it got everything it wanted. I think that this is one of the countries that we can say that it got everything that it wanted. Maybe not from Trinidad, but from Venezuela for sure. Then I want them to fight back. I know that sounds naive. Yeah, they're going to fight back. I think Sanpi, I think it's just the normal human behavior to fight back. I think they are traumatized. They're still trying to come to grips. Think about it, guys. Christmas, and I understand the Venezuelans were having a big time. They were having, the time of their lives for Christmas and for the New Year's. So they've just come out of those two celebrations, right? Out of Christmas and the New Year celebration. Boom. And your president is taken out, right? So the U.S. caught them off guard. So I'm thinking that people are trying to come to grips, because you and I have not even gotten over the holiday celebrations yet, right? And think about Venezuela. Just came out of the holiday celebrations and they're boom, and their president is out. So they're still coming to grips with how this operation really was able to be that successful, right? They're coming to grips with that. And as soon as they get over that trauma, hopefully, we don't want anything to go bad and then affects neighboring countries, but I doubt it's going to they're going to sit down and take it. If all social programs are stopped, there will be a civil war. I think they're going to be stopped, Marie Antoinette, and that's the problem. I think it's going to be stopped. I don't think it's going to be run. Remember now that the United States is not going to run it like a socialist nation. That is why Chavez actually, took over power in 1999, and then he changed the state into a socialist state and started, helping people, whatever he was doing. The United States is certainly not going to do that, because who's going to run the country? The oil companies. The oil companies. So they are just going to run the state for profit. It's going to be a for-profit state, and certainly you won't have those social programs anymore. Annie is saying, I think they are not protesting nor celebrating yet, because they are still under the same regime, but they are wondering what is going to happen to them. They're not under the same regime. They're under the same government, but it's not going to be the same regime at all. The United States is going to run in the way that it wants to run. And very soon it's going to go down there, as we are suggesting, and stopping all of these things, these social programs. Trump does not like socialism at all. He speaks against it. So he's not going to be there. They're just there because the United States has not yet replaced that government yet, but it's not going to be the same regime. He signed over the wealth to China, and Russia is its silver deposit gone for safety, and the market just went crazy for silver. Yeah. And the other day when they were stopping they were putting a blockade on all tankers in and out of Venezuela. You know that it cost a lot of money. They lost a lot of money because eventually Maduro had to, because a lot of the oil was like, still in the storage. So he had to enter into an agreement where he had to lower the price sometimes to have the buyers, because their thing was, held up. Their oil was held up. So he had to offer them a lower price for the oil, which was something very, very interesting. Now, where will be an emergence, an insurgency in Venezuela? Because Donald Trump will will have to put boots on the ground to protect those business assets. Well, he says he's not going to put any boots on the ground. Did you hear that? I read something today where Donald Trump is saying that he's not going to put any boots on the ground. I think what is happening, Lorenzo, Donald Trump, there's going to be a lot of confusion in Venezuela. There's going to be a lot of chaos in Venezuela. There's going to be a lot of crime in Venezuela. He's saying he's sending troops to protect the oil fields. That's what he's doing. So once the U.S., puppet government is protected and the oil people are protected just like Haiti, then whatever happens in Venezuela, the United States doesn't care. Whatever happens in Venezuela, the United States is not going to care. That's the real thing. It's going to be like another Haiti. All right, so you protect where your people are, and the other parts of the country that has nothing to do with U.S. interests, yeah, let them kill themselves if they want to kill themselves. That's why they rush in after 3 planes took off to China and Russia to stop it. Yeah. Well, didn't stop it though. Well, I meant right now they are still under the same. Oh yeah, Delcy is the president. No, I was hearing that Delcy was going to Russia. Is she still going to Russia, or is she going to be still there? Because President Trump, quite interestingly, he said she's a nice lady, and she was the one who was, sort of speaking very, the rhetoric was sort of hostile towards the Trinidadians, even though I don't think she wanted to speak that way, but I think she was forced to speak that way. But the fact of the matter is that I never thought that Trump would have thought that she's a nice lady. But to Trump, according to Trump, she's a nice lady. I was shocked when he said that. Venezuela and the U.S. are on the escalation ladder. China and Russia want U.S. to invade Venezuelans, and that the U.S. will deplete its treasury. Yes, that is one too. Yes, absolutely. That is one, and also that they sent, the Venezuela also bought from them, arms, weapons, right, and these fighter jets and whatever. So Venezuela spent a lot of money on China, and they reaped lots of money from Venezuela, right? So it's both ways, because as we're saying, war is profitable on multiple fronts, not only on the U.S. front, but also on the other world powers front. War is profitable because the military contractors and other people make hundreds of thousands of dollars from these wars. And that is what we're discussing, and we want to help people to understand. He will use Trinidad for its soldiers and army. Watch out, Trinidad, for false flag, so Kamala will call a draft. Well, that is possible. I don't know if Trump cares about. Kamala will probably have to try to protect her own country. I don't think he's going to call for draft for Venezuela, unless it gets out of hand where the oil companies cannot survive in Venezuela. Don Chelly saying, hard to tell. The vice president under Maduro has assumed power. Do if they resist, there could be more bombing. Yeah, and he says, Trump is very clear that they will have to run the country the way how America tells them to run the country. He's very clear on that they will run the country in the way, I forgot the quote, in the way, the mode that America wants. If they don't do it, he says they're going to have to leave. They have to go, right? So Delcy will not be able to do things as she normally does, right? So it's either she gets out or pretends, He's only saying she is nice, she's a nice lady, to make sure she stays in power to keep the peace. You're right. That's a very good point, Annie. If they put anybody else as leader, the army would revolt. Yes, this is a very good point. On point, yeah. It could be that they have allowed her to be in power so the people will not have to protest. Yeah, this is a very, very deep point. Strategic, right? Give the people the illusion that you're under the same regime, the same socialist regime, by having her as the. But I don't know if whenever he selects when America selects the president, the person that they want, if they will allow Delcy to be there. But for the time being, as Annie is saying, for the time being, and to limit the amount of revolt and so forth, that they will just allow her to be there for now. You know, that is it. Because they could have put in a Machado, even though if they had put in Machado, there would have been resistance. That you're correct. If Machado had been put in, there would have been lots of resistance, wouldn't there? Yeah, there would have been loads of resistance if Machado had been put into office there. Yeah. So that is very interesting. And we have seen that. And yeah. Now, how unified do you think is the Venezuelan army? Could a split lead to civil conflict? That's the question. How unified? Do you think the Venezuelan army is unified? And do you think that if it's not unified, that this division could result in a civil war where they begin now to fight against one faction, against the other, the Maduro faction, against the post-Maduro faction? Do you think that is possible? Because these things happen in countries where you have, yeah. So we have, but when they see the oil leaving and no money coming in, we'll see. Yeah. The only thing though, if they do not take action now, people generally afterwards, they are going to just accept the status quo. Right? After a while, they just begin to accept the status quo. People do that. And they'll leave. Many people are going to leave, and that's the whole problem. Many people are just going to leave. They're just going to get up and go. I think now what the president has done, the US president has done to have taken out Maduro, the Venezuelans are going to think second if they revolt in Venezuela, because they know that they can be easily crushed. So I think many of them they're going to revolt. They're going to have some revolts, don't get me wrong, but I think that many of them are going to leave. You're going to have huge migrations outside of Venezuela, and this could be another problem where the crime and the frustrations are brought to these other countries, including Trinidad, Guyana, and other neighboring countries. This is now where the crux of the matter lies. Right? This is now where the crux of the matter lies. But do you think the Venezuelan army was united? And if it's not united, or is united, I should say, and if it's not united, if they have factions, do you think the divisions in the army will eventually create a civil war? Because the military can also lead out in that civil war, which would cost a lot of lives. That's the question that we have to reflect on at the given moment. Now, should the Caribbean expect a refugee surge or other humanitarian crises? Do you think that we should expect a refugee? Do you think many refugees will end up in Trinidad and neighboring countries? We have Venezuelan citizenry is galvanized. Sonia, it's military. Venezuela's strength is asymmetric in nature, so in some ways they want the U.S. close. Okay, good point. And definitely, as Sanpi is saying, definitely, I think the military there might be divisions there. I would not put it past Russia or China to fund the proxy forces in Venezuela to draw America into a military quagmire. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them too. You're right. Because that is what they're doing to Russia in the Ukraine. right? So Russia might just do it to the United States now in Venezuela. Right? So I think that that's the point. They might just do it to and I think that the United States is also behind the war with China and Taiwan. Any war that you see happening with neighboring countries, the US always has something behind it. I don't know why. The US is always trying to divide neighboring countries, family, people who are probably the same family, always trying to do that. Because Taiwan and China, I mean, they had their problems because they're brothers and sisters, right? But the fact of the matter is that they weren't really talking about war. It was just in recent times. I think it was under the first Trump administration that we were hearing them almost like they're about to war and all of that nonsense. Okay, and so the U.S. likes to provoke war. Not sure if they will go to TNT, but definitely the other islands. They are going to go to TNT too. They might not go there legally, but they are going to go there. And remember too that some of the people who are going to retaliate are going to definitely go to Trinidad, because they want to, hopefully not to avenge, and I hope that it doesn't happen, but that might be something, that they are going to do. We hope it doesn't happen for the protection and safety of Trinidadians and Tobagonians. But it's might be wishful thinking. Divide and conquer, right? That always works. Absolutely. When you divide and conquer, you weaken people, right? And and they end up not being able to look at the big picture and fight for a common cause, right? And that is what the US and empires are good at doing. And I think Martin Luther King Jr. recognized that in the United States. And he realized that black people and white people, what we call white people and black people, if they come together and fight against the oligarchs in Washington, D.C. and around the United States, that they would benefit, right? And that's why they actually got rid of him. Because before he died, he was planning a march on Washington in which he was going to have the causes of, the white working class and the causes of the black working class and all classes of people of different ethnic groups coming together in unity against the power structure and also the war against Vietnam. Well, that already passed. That already went by time But the fact of the matter, he was one of them who clamored. No, it had not passed. I think the end of the war was in the 1970s. So he was even fighting also on that cause for the war against Vietnam. But he included everybody, whites, blacks, Asians, right? And that's what we need. We need to stop now preaching racial, ethnic, cultural, national divisions and coming together to fight against these power structures. If we do that, then we can win the war. If we're fighting against ourselves, right, because we look differently, we have our noses are shaped differently, we speak different languages, we have different cultures, then we are not going to win the war. Okay? So that is what we are seeing. We are seeing of some very, very troubling developments in our world. Now, could TNT or CARICOM realistically influence Venezuela's outcome, or is the region mostly a bystander? Do you think CARICOM has anything now to offer Venezuela? Somebody's saying here, I said, not sure if they will go to TNT, but definitely the same other. Yeah, no, I was asking, do you think CARICOM has anything to offer Venezuela? Can we offer Venezuela any help post-Maduro? Anybody? What do you think? How do you think the CARICOM member states can assist Venezuela in its rebuilding efforts post-Maduro? Or do you think the United States would not allow any member state to participate? Hebrews is saying the Caribbean should expect to have their own fighters, ships, planes, technology, correct? scouts, armies, as they have been excessively infiltrated by outsiders and new pirates. Absolutely, that we should. We should. But at this point, you really wonder where would we get the money now to we can't even find money for education and healthcare, much less to talk about fighter jets and planes and all of those technologies. We're just way behind. Most of us are still in the 1970s, 80s. We haven't even gotten to the 2000s, 21st century, in terms of our advanced or technological advancement. We're way behind. We're way behind. So that's a far project, Mr. Hebrew. But you're correct, Hebrews. Yeah, but you're correct. We should be able to defend ourselves. And I think that if we had listened to Marcus Garvey when he was trying to develop us as a region, Jamaica particularly, but we rejected his vision. We rejected his vision to our own detriment. Somebody's saying CARICOM, Stephen Knight is saying CARICOM can't do anything for Venezuela. And yeah, you're correct, because we did not stand up for what was right. I think I agree with Stephen, because we did not in the first place stand up for what was right. Right? We were just articulating some empty statements. Now, has CARICOM even ever stated a unilateral position with respect to Venezuela? I have no expectations for any action from them. Yeah, exactly what I was saying, that they did not really express any unified statements or about Venezuela and what was happening, and the fact that what the United States was doing was wrong. They were just saying that they should try to, resolve the tension diplomatically, right? Which is the correct thing to have said. But I think that one of the things that we used to be good at back in the days, but things and times have changed, is the fact that we used to also blockade. But when you think about it too, I was about to say placing a blockade on all countries that are, fighting with Venezuela. But the thing about it is that when you think about it, CARICOM, most of the CARICOM countries had stopped even accepting Venezuelan oil. So from day one, we weren't acting well with Venezuela. Venezuela was kind to many of us, not Trinidad, because Trinidad is an oil-rich country, but for countries like Jamaica, Barbados, the Dominican Republic, and other countries, Venezuela was very good to us in terms of giving us oil. Well, not giving us, but selling us at a cheaper rate, right? And the fact that we did not really stand up and say, no, we can't. That was the first bad decision we made. We should have told the United States that we have the right to trade with any country that we deem is beneficial to our interests, right? But we did not do that. And as a result of that, the United States has controlled us. Those who did not plot in front of Venezuela's face plotted behind its back. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying, even though I was very strident in my comments against Mrs. President Becesar, but I did say in one of my videos that at least she has the backbone to say, this is what I believe in. I can work with people like that. I can work with Mrs. President Becesar because I know who she is and what she represents. What I don't like are people who pretend as if they're not about a particular thing, and then behind the scenes, that's exactly what they're siding with. So I think we should congratulate Mrs. President Becesar in the case, in the sense that she actually, from the initial stages, from the outset, she said that she was, well, she didn't really say she was anti-Maduro. She said she was anti-dictatorship, even though we know that she was referring to Maduro. Stephen Knight is saying that most of these leaders in the Caribbean care about visa than sovereignty. Absolutely. And I must say, Stephen Knight, that is not only the leaders, though, the people too. Because if the leaders also make, unpopular decisions, and the U.S. imposes sanctions in terms of visas going to America, and many of the citizens are going to rise up against the leader. And that's the truth. That is the naked truth. That the followers, also the citizens, all often, when leaders make the right decisions, if we are impacted, we fight against them because we're going to say that they're the ones who allowed us to not get our visas. um, yeah, and Fran, is it Fran Tube? Fran F Tube is saying you're correct. They didn't stand up then. Yeah, if they had stood up then, in terms of saying no, we are not going to, and that was a principled. I think that was a principled thing, or the principled thing that they should have done. To have told the United States that this is beneficial to us. And at the time when we stopped, the United States was still buying oil from Venezuela. Do you know that? At the time when we stopped, the United States was still buying oil from Venezuela. Right? So that was ironic. But control is what the United States does. They provided valuable assistance. They did. Right? And that's why we can't even blame Trinidad too much, because as you were saying, Trinidad has its oil field and its oil and gas field. So they can play that sort of game, even though it affects them too, because their economy could have been stronger if they had entered into a better deal with Venezuela under Maduro. But at least Trinidad is an oil-rich country, but Jamaica isn't, and many of the other countries, right? And they did not stand with Venezuela. That's correct, yeah. And we have the no boats, no planes, no ships, and no visas. Caribbean screwed. they're going to protest. They're going to protest because we know that to many Caribbean citizens, the United States is like heaven, right? And if they can't go there, they think it gives them status, right? And we still behave like slaves when it comes on to visiting the United States. Now, we have Annie MC says that Antigua just spat out Cuba like a plum seed to restore their visas, right? That is it. That is what we do. We like to complain about our leaders, but may I just suggest, and I always say that our leaders come from us. So their very nature, right, their behavior come from us. That's how we behave for the most part. It's only because they're now on show and they have to make the decisions, and their decisions are made public, that we know what they stand for or not, right? And we are not public, so we don't know many of the persons. We don't know who many of the citizens might even, be on U.S.'s side. We don't know. The majority of military training for the officer class and soldiers in the Caribbean comes from America and the UK. Absolutely, and that's a very good point, Lorenzo. That our military is trained by the UK. And even the guy that is now in DC for Jamaica, the ambassador, Anderson, he was trained by the UK, right? So the fact of the matter is that they control us in every capacity. Don Shelley is saying, I understand, though, that Martin Luther King said before he died that he feared that he had integrated his people into a burning house. Yeah, because he knew that the power structure, the power white structure, were the ones who were dangerous. And he understood that if we did not find a way to beat these people, that they were going to control us. And I think Martin Luther King understood that the civil rights movement, whatever gains that they had accrued in the 1960s, that it was superficial and that the battle had just begun. The problem with Black people is that they thought that they had gained in the 1960s. And they gained some things, don't get me wrong, but they think that the battle was over. But Martin Luther King Jr. knew that the battle had just begun and that this was an ongoing matter and the fight. So he said, let's unite our hands and heart together as a country and fight against the power structure. Remember now, it's a power structure that is against us. It's not the people. It's a power structure that is against ordinary people. And they would see anything to us for us to be disunited so that we cannot fight against them. No military either. Yes, we don't have any military. All the Caribbean countries would have been stronger together. Absolutely. If we had said Sanp, when they were asking us to stop the arrangement, the agreement we had with Venezuela. First of all, we should have said that we have been with Venezuela since what, 2017, when 2007 rather, when the Petrocarib had been agreed, had been signed into law, and we had no problems with them. I've never heard one country, and you can correct me, complaining about the agreement we'd had with Venezuela. They never reneged on the deal. They never, right? And I'm really upset. I don't understand. How is it that we come to turn our backs on a nation that we never, because Nicolás Maduro could have said after Hugo Chavez died, he could have said, you know what happened? I'm going to sell these people at a higher cost and make some money for myself and my friends and family, right? But he never did. He was still kind to us. He was still kind to us. So and I never heard of any complaint. So I'm wondering, why did we even betray them and by stop, buying their oil? And then we suffered. The Caribbean nations suffered. The DR suffered. Jamaica suffered because they were selling their oil and gas at a cheaper rate than the market price. Okay. Don Chelly is saying, I don't think that the USA will allow the Caribbean to assist in the rebuilding. You're right. Only those who accede, Don Chelly, to US request, like Mrs. Kamala Pearson-Necessor. So obviously Trinidad had a lot of experience in oil, the oil, development and whatever. So I'm sure some of the Trinidadian, oil specialists and engineers will be sent to Venezuela to help in the rebuilding efforts of Venezuela, and among other people, other professionals in Trinidad. So I'm sure that will be good for them. We are witnessing a very dangerous precedent set by the U.S. that compromises even fully undermines absolutely the sovereignty of the Caribbean and Latin America. And yes, I think that we have no sovereignty anymore. And Trump said it. He didn't say it in so many words. I know myself. He didn't say it in so many words, but what he said this morning is that the other nations, the message that he has sent, the other Caribbean nations in the region will understand that the United States means business. And he said that he has upped the Monroe Doctrine. That's why he's now saying that, he agrees that it should be now called the Donroe Doctrine, because it means, therefore, that the nations will now have to do what the United States tells them to do. If not, they will have to suffer the consequences. So you are correct about that. On point. Then we have Stephen Knight is saying all these leaders should have come together and stand and stood with Cuba. Yes, they should have, but they're not, because next they're going to be saying that they're communist and the United States does not want communists in the region. Remember now that the U.S. strategic document, the National Security Strategic Document, is saying that the United States should control the region. Latin America and the Caribbean region should be controlled by the United States. And with now the ouster of Nicolás Maduro, I think Trump is going to cement that ideology in all countries. That's what he's telling. He's already threatening, the president of Colombia and the president of Mexico, that if you don't shut your mouth up, you're next, right? And maybe Lula da Silva of Brazil also could be next. So we are in some serious problems. I think the diaspora of the diaspora CARICOM could all leave rather en masse. The US, UK, etc., the $3 billion US a year remittance to Jamaica could develop a great military. One of the things that is amazing is how US dollars and how the United States can track people and the banks in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Through the FAC, is it called FAC? The FACT or the FACT system, or that it came from under the Obama's administration, where the banks actually, report any transaction you have, in that country with the United States. They share information. So, yeah, it sounds logical, but I really wonder if the United States would not have some, some sort of control even over our monies, right? Notice now that they're charging a surcharge on remittances sent to these countries. The US is resorting to that, which shows you that the United States controls a lot of our lives, all right? Even the things that belong to us, which your money, you should not be taxed because you have already paid your tax to Uncle Sam. But Uncle Sam is still asking you to pay tax on your own money, having given Uncle Sam his money already. This is fascinating. Now, these last 70 years is what has sealed the fate of Black and African people into perpetual servitude. And you're correct. You're correct. You're correct. Question is now whether we are independent states or simply vassal states. We're not independent states. Were you here? I know myself when we said it seems our leaders are not even independent enough to condemn this blatant breach of international law openly. We're not independent because we never earned our independence. I was saying I know myself. We just was given independence because Great Britain could no longer afford the expenses of taking care of us. So it's just like your mom or your dad, right? You get to age 14, right? And they say, look here, we don't have any money. Maybe they got into an accident and they are injured and they can't take care of you. They say, okay, we can't take care of you anymore. You have to go, right? And you have to take care of yourself. So that's where we were in the 1960s. And they told us we could go with nothing, right? That's what they did. I believe at that time, some of them were threatened by the US. And I think that we are under US hegemonic power. After Great Britain left, I think that the US took over. Not in the sense of a Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, but in terms of unofficial colonies. We are like some unofficial colonies where the US controls us indirectly. Cowardice is the reason why the other islands betrayed Venezuela and Haiti for that matter. And they will betray any other person, any other country in the region, whether it's Trinidad, it's Jamaica, or whatever. They and Grenada, Grenada was betrayed. And that's what we have to understand too. Why would we think we're not going to be betrayed when we know that in Grenada, a small territory, small island, was betrayed by its fellow CARICOM, well, not all, but some of its fellow CARICOM states. And he's saying Maduro did mention that they helped the little islands with oil, and he was upset to see that they turned against Venezuela. He would have to be upset, wouldn't you? As I'm saying to you, I have never read a newspaper article in which people were complaining that Maduro or Hugo Chavez, were exploiting us, or they were not acceding to the deal that we had signed off to, right? Which some people do. Some governments do, and they say, wow, they told us that they would have been giving us this, and if we gave them this, that this would have been the case, right? But they didn't do that, and they continued. And after Hugo Chavez died, Maduro continued with the agreement, right? Hands off to him, and then we turned against him. We only did not stop, but we turned against him and called him a dictator, right? Now, Sanpi says we have no sovereignty because we refused to join the fight against the US. Correct. We did not fight for what is right. We don't want to get into fights. No, let me just be very careful right now. It is not that we just want to get into any fight, because sometimes we have to mind our own business too. Sometimes we can't, but we have to be principled, and things that affect us, we should make sure that it is clear. And the whole matter of the trade transaction of the Petrocarib in which we were, it was beneficial to our existence, not to Trinidad, of course, because Trinidad is oil rich, right? But to the other Caribbean islands, it was beneficial. And the US forced us to stop it under Donald Trump too. It was actually under Donald Trump. And he came back and he has finished up the work that he started. O. Smith is saying this is about saving the dollar because of what Europe did with the Russians' frozen assets. The world is going to hard currency or trade with BRICS. OPEC is going to drop the dollar, with which value drop. Now, you know what I'm thinking? I don't know if you're thinking like myself, some of you. I think that this dollar and this hype around the dollar going and stuff like that, it is because they're bringing us into the cashless society. So they're making us believe that when the United States dollar goes, we're going to live in a free world, right? And or it's the end of U.S. hegemony, but that is not true. I think it's a grave deception. It's another deception. And let me just say, we are living in an age of deception. And that is why we have to connect the dots. Because a lot of the apparently good things that we think are happening to free us, and that these so-called powers are doing to bring us liberty, they are consolidating again their power. And we have been talking about the cashless society. So what they want to do, whether it's Russia or it's China, they want the currency, the paper monies to go, and for us to have cashless societies. All right. So all of these things are in tandem with the one world government or one world governance. So let's not be fooled about this dollar thing dying, because that is what they all want to do, including the United States too. Want its dollar to die so that they can go into a cashless society. Do you agree with that? I wonder if you agree. Now we have Stephen Knight is saying, it's easy for Trump to threaten us because we're a small countries that do not have military might. Trump only threatens, correct. He only threatens countries that can't defend. But he's threatening Iran, and Iran can defend itself to an extent, right? And they threaten Russia and all these things, and Russia can defend itself, So they threaten anybody. But they may put more pressure. I think what you're saying is that they apply more pressure to nation states that they know are very weak. Yeah, that I agree. I don't think he's going to test Brazil, a country of over 200 million people and the largest in South America. Well, yeah, well, Russia is has a lot of people there too. How many people are in Russia? But Brazil is a massive country. I agree with you. I'm not sure about its military, if it has one of the strongest military. Remember, the population size doesn't matter if it doesn't have a powerful military. Yeah, but I've been to Brazil twice. And lovely country, and I know, yes, a lot of people there, and they're politically aware. When you go to Brazil, and what we're doing now is the conversation people have on the streets, the conversation you and I are having now on this platform. Ordinary people in Brazil have these conversations, and they're deep. They're very political in Brazil, and you can hardly meet anybody, and they don't talk about politics in Brazil, and their conversations are generally very interesting. You people that don't live with demons have high hopes on their trustworthiness. They are 100% for betrayal and breaking every treaty. Good luck. You will be the doormat. Yeah, we have to be careful about entering into agreements. But what I'm saying to you, if you're talking about the Venezuelan agreement, I did not hear of any criticisms of it. If you have, you can let me know, but I have never heard of anybody criticizing the agreement that we had entered into with Venezuela, with Petrocarib. Never. I hope country like Jamaica is buying up silver and gold and divert some of the country's resources out of the dollar because it's losing. The Jamaica is under the IMF agreement, and whatever Jamaica owns is going to go to the IMF. And it's worse now with hurricane, the aftermath, I should say, of Hurricane Melissa, that everything now is going to be owned by the IMF. We have to borrow now, and they're going to control more of our assets and all of that stuff. I know myself is saying the recipe that works for the US and Zionists. Just please the 1%ers and they will chorus 99% of the population. Correct. That 1%ers want their visas to travel and shop in the US, right? But the 99%ers, some of them also want that because they do have that privilege. Some of them have that privilege too. Now we have Stephen Knight says he has every right to be upset. This man gave us cheap oil and gas, right? But guess what? It's for our benefit. It's for all, and the United States was also buying oil from Venezuela. Right. It's a cashless society. It's a cashless society that they're moving on to. So don't be fooled again now, ladies and gentlemen, about this, the end of the US dollar. Yeah, so it's going to be the end of the Canadian dollar and the Russian whatever, right? Remember the pandemic, we have to remember the pandemic, that all of them align themselves with the same agenda. So we must be careful about believing and dividing up them and saying one is better than the other. China over there is better, and it's not as we think it is. Some stores in the US already do not accept cash, right? It's all about controlling spending. The penny was the first right. So the thing about it is that even US is going to be happy with the end of the dollar. Because they're transitioning into a cashless society. Even U.S. treasuries will be cashless, right? Like crypto, absolutely. So you guys are seeing it. You're seeing it. Don Shelley, all the Caribbean nations will have to do the bidding of the USA, right? And we have given, I think, Fred Corbin and I, the video on the cashless society, and that is how they track us. So all of this is in tandem, whether it's going to be the BRICS or the whatever you call it, right? They are going to be online with it. The BRICS nations were online during the pandemic. They all did the same thing, okay? Not necessarily true, I agree, but I also believe that there's going to handover of power going on between the USA and into I think I had the program the other day in terms of the technocracy, and the speaker, who's an expert on this, was very clear in the sense that the United States, and history is there too, helped China to have been where she is right now. Not that the Chinese did not use their smarts to build up too, but they got a lot of help because the Chinese model is going to be eventually the model of the world, right? Where you're tracked, you're traced, you might not have the freedoms that you think are normal in Western societies. All of that is going to change. Why do you think they had the pandemic started first in China, even though the United States and China were responsible for it, right? Because that was the standard, and that is what she did it first, and then the others followed what she did, right? I noticed the PM from Barbados has been very quiet. She is very quiet because I think she has to be careful too, lest she wants a third. I think that she wants a third term. I think Mia Motley wants a third term in office, and her friend in Guyana, he got a second term. Her friend again in Jamaica, Andrew Holness, got a third term in office. I think she's looking for a third term, and she has to be careful because if she talks against Trump, she might not get it. Why it seems like my whole life I have been hearing that JA is under the IMF. Yeah, it's under the IMF and under the IMF right now. In fairness to Jamaica, Annie, we were about to leave the IMF again, after how many years? I think 12 or 13 years with the IMF. But because of Hurricane Melissa, it brought us right back to ground zero, or near to ground zero, and we have to go back to the IMF. But we were near. Give the government its credit. We were almost near to saying ta-ta, goodbye. Now, Lorenzo Jackson is saying, currently Chevron is still exporting oil from Venezuela to America, right? So why couldn't we? Why couldn't the Caribbean nations accept Venezuelan offer? Look at who has power in the UN. The usual suspects, absolutely. The UK, the USA, China, and Russia. And look at what is happening in the one of the reasons, not because I'm of any, I'm a prophet. I'm no prophet. But guys, if you're looking at what is happening in Israel and Palestine, and the UK and China and Russia and these countries had power to veto on what is happening there, they didn't do anything, right? They only talked. They did a lot of talking, right? But no action. And you thought that they were going to go down there to save Nicolás Maduro? I didn't think so. That was wishful thinking. China just called out the US the other day because they are trying to invent a cryptocurrency. What is it called? The consolidate. All of their debts, China believes it because they want all the debt to disappear. Interesting. Very interesting, Will Smith. And we have Sanpi saying, I think it's not that simple with regards to Mia Motley and why the science. What do you think, What do you think, Sanpi? Why do you think she's silent then? If it's that she doesn't want a third term. Why do you think she's silent? She and Trump are not the best. They don't drink coffee. And he doesn't like her. She doesn't like him. Right? So that could be one of the reasons. But I think her main reason is that she wants a third term. And she's seeing that if presidents talk out against Trump and what he's doing, he can influence elections. Donald Trump and the United States can influence elections. And he saw what happened there, even in Honduras, where President Trump was saying to the opposition that he wanted them to be in power. Yeah, not sure. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Yeah, I think we're all not sure. Santi, I think we're all not sure about everything that we are, or even the Civil War. We're all not sure if these things are going to happen. But we're just looking at the dynamics and we're making some intelligent speculations. Intelligent. We are allowed to make intelligent speculations, not to be arrogant and say, this is dogmatic, this is going to happen, this is the reason why she is silent. We're not saying that. We're just making some intelligent speculations. But we're not sure. We're all not sure. Retirement salary is dependent on silence in the Caribbean. You're correct. Even that too. We have to be careful what we say because we can be reprimanded. Stephen Ant is saying, in my opinion, Motley be the one to grab all of these islands together and stand up, in my opinion. Well, she stands up for what she wants, one side of U.S. hegemonic power. When the Democrats are in power, they can do anything for Mia Motley and she will be on their side. Now that Trump is in power and she's not a part of that ideology, she separates herself, but it's the same empire. Right? Whether it's Democrat or Republican, it's the same U.S. empire. So Motley is the same as Kamala, person predecessor. Santi saying, are you aware that CARICOM is trying to build relationships with Africa? I think we talked about that in the past. Yes, but we talk about Africa as Africa is sometimes just a one country, it's a continent. Just like we talk about Asia is a continent. So when we say they're building relationship with Africa, what country? And because some countries are not on most of them, well, my understanding, are on the sphere of the United States. And Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are the three countries now trying to set an example in the region, on the continent, to move away from so-called Western influences, but they're moving into another sphere of influence, which would be the Russo and the Chinese influence. So are the African countries independent, or are they in the same predicament as we find ourselves in the Caribbean region? That's the question that we must ask. And I think that to me, they are dependent. They also need to become independent. One of the things that Marcus Garvey, again, I go back to him, he was trying after, when he was alive, for us in the region, the Caribbean region, whether Trinidad or Barbados or Jamaica, to go back to Africa to help them to build, and from the United States to help them to build, and all over the diaspora, the entire diaspora, in all the Americas, to go back to Africa to help them to build, right, so that they could become independent. But they eventually took roads also in which they fell under the United States sphere of influence, right? Yeah, so just dealing with them and having trade with them and they're not independent means absolutely nothing. They are dependent on China and Russia, correct? Right, and that if they're dependent on these countries, it's going to be the same, Mia Motley was at the head of this. That's what I'm understanding, that she was, because there was a Barbados Accord in Barbados about, what Nicolás Maduro should do. Yeah, I understand that she's at the head of what happened there, even though she is pretending that she's not. And he's saying, I think the IMF put people in debt. It does not help small states. Absolutely. Mr. Davidson Boudou and the Grenadian headed the IMF through the 1980s and I believe 1990s, and he could not help TNT and Jamaica. Correct. Because they don't do what they want to do. They do what the IMF. In fact, they're just called there for Jamaica and Trinidad and Grenada to think that, oh, a person of from your nationality, they won't want to, impose any stringent, or they won't want to impose the worst program up on you, right? On you. So they pretend as if that person means you well when they don't, right? So we have Sanpi says the summit was on the African continent, including ECOWAS members. Yes, but right now, what's his name? Burkina Faso's president. He is very now leery of the ECOWAS members. He realizes now that they are pro-Western, and he's very, very much skeptical of ECOWAS. That's Burkina Faso. Read the book The Economic Hitman. Yeah, I read that book in 2005. So that was years ago I read that book. Yeah. We have here, Don Shelley was saying the third term for Motley. Yes, she won a third term. And remember now that I think the election in Barbados is what? Is it this year that her election is? And Trump will be in office still. Yes, Ibrahim Traore. He's not with ECOWAS at this time. He's very skeptical, especially with the bombing of Nigeria. He's not so much in with them at the moment. In fact, I think Ibrahim Traore has now blocked Americans from getting visas to going to the country, because even citizens he's skeptical of right now. And I think he's going to be clamping down more based on what he's seen happen in Venezuela. And the fact that the United States has bombed Nigeria suggests that the United States is also after Burkina Faso and the Sahel group. They're going to be after them. The ECOWAS have to go. It is not for Africa, right? It is more for the Western thing. And I think that is what Ibrahim Traore is calling out. He was a part of it, but I think he wanted to see how he could, allow them to be a part, just to tap into his vision. But eventually, when he saw what is happening in Nigeria, I think he has now said, you know what happened? I am not going to take any risk with this. I am going to stop this ECOWAS thing. And the other day there was, I think it was in November, mid-November, there was some helicopter that wanted to, flyer jet that was wanted to land in Burkina Faso. And he stopped them because he realized that it could be a ploy that the United States wants to, invade. And right now there's no trust between Nigeria and some of these Western African states and Burkina Faso and the Sahel group. The trust is not there anymore. ECOWAS is the State Department, just like CARICOM. They got to go. Very well said, Stephen Knight. Very well said. The ECOWAS is just like the State Department, right? And definitely controlled by whom? The CIA, right? And I did have a video with, I think it was a very good video that was done with me and the same Fred Corbin of Barbados, in which he talked about the history of CARICOM. Please go and watch that video. I'll put it in the description. And that was a very important, he gave a very good historical account of CARICOM, right? That Nigerian leader is a traitor. Yeah, he's an American puppet. The current Nigerian leader is an American puppet, for sure. And that is why Burkina Faso and the Sahel group are very leery of Nigeria at the moment, because they understand that the U.S. has multiple agendas whenever it invades or bombs a country. It's not just what they say they're doing. And many times it's not what they say that they're doing. They have lots of agendas apart from that which they say they're doing. If Mia is not given a third term, this project cannot move forward. The summit was first in the Caribbean, then in Ethiopia. But Mia Mottley is just one of the U.S. also. She is just a State Department echo chamber too. Mia Mottley is not different from the president of Nigeria, is she? I don't think she is. So I think she is not. What she has done to Haiti, I think we should know who Mia Mottley is right now. I don't think we should be ifing and butting about Mia Mottley. She has great rhetoric and she knows how to speak the talk, but she doesn't always walk the walk, right? She's excellent at talking the talk. Now, Sandpiece, I agree with what you're saying about ECOWAS but we are, all of us is trying to find freedom. But you can't find freedom when you're controlled by, as you know, Stephen Knight was saying, the State Department. We can't find freedom. No, we have to create things independent of these people, right? Because if we can trade with them, but we can't build with them, and that's the difference, right? We can't build our movements with them, and that's the difference. Are Africans fools? They keep borrowing chump change from Europe with high interest when their natural resources worth more than what Europe have. Yeah, because they're owned by Europeans, right? When you go to Jamaica, for example, Barbados is too, who owns all these hotels and, you know, a lot of the prime properties in these countries. Europeans, right? Very powerful content. Thank you, Julian. Yes, And I'm sorry that Mr. Pereira did not make it. I thought he would have. He told me, he promised me he would have come. He's sort of, you know, I don't know. Stephen Knight is there. You go, Miss Motley can give a good talk, right? She can fool a lot of people, but she can't fool everybody, right? And I think by now we should, you know, we saw what happened in Haiti, and she was behind all the things. And Jemima Pear, Miss Pear, the Professor Pear was on our show, and she revealed to us on several occasions. I think she was on the program 3 times, right? And she revealed on those occasions the role that Miss Motley played in Haiti is not different from what Mrs. Person Besessar is playing in Trinidad. All right, no difference at all. Sanpi saying they are too afraid to do what Ibrahim Traore and the AES did. Absolutely. And we are also closer to the United States, to the central power system, so we're even more afraid. I would really love a discussion on what Mia Motley has done to Haiti. If this is possible, I remember only a few details. Yeah, you can go back to my videos with what's her name, with Miss Professor Jemima Pear, and you will see that. But she was the one who led out the U.S. missions against the gangs in Haiti. Now, what happened is that the gangs in Haiti, if you understand, and Professor Jemima Pear has been saying that, you know, on many occasions, she's a Haitian American scholar. She has been saying that the gangs were created by the United States in the first place, and they are the real gangs. So the fact of the matter is that the gangs are trying to control the gangs. How is that going to be? The architects of the gangs are trying to control the gangs. So when the United States goes to Haiti and say that they're there to control the gangs, it's not true. What they're there to do is to control Haitian resources. Now, who created the chaos in the first place? The U.S., right? In the same way in Venezuela, the U.S. created the chaos for the most part. Not all of the chaos, we must say, but the majority, because Venezuela, even though it wasn't the richest of country in the world, it wasn't the poorest before Obama and U.S. presidents started imposing sanctions on the country and seizing their assets. It wasn't the poorest, right? They were actually, you know, surviving. And there were no disruptions between, you know, I didn't see a lot of Venezuelans migrating before Obama actually, you know, imposed the sanctions on them. So it's the same thing. You create the chaos, and then you pretend as if you're going there now to solve the chaos. And that's what Mia Motley did with the U.S. Nigeria's Madame, is it Madame or is it the Tinubu? Is he a man or a woman? I think, is he not a man? I don't know. Belong to the same families that were involved in selling slaves during the slave trade. Much of what Africa is being run by the slave selling families, and you are right about that. And I'm happy you're putting this here to the fore, because a lot of times we just use the word black, and because somebody's black, we think, and the nation is predominantly black, we think that these people mean us well, and it's not true. A lot of them sometimes work with these Western powers because their families are intertwined and they make money. It's a corporate. We are living in corporate societies, corporate nations. Now, what do you think about the entire Western Hemisphere, from Canada in the north to Argentina in the south, leaving out the U.S.? We number over, but look at Argentina is with the United States, Canada is with the United States. Make no bones about it. Trump and the guy there in Canada, what's his name again? Not Trudeau, the one after Trudeau. Could you remind me of the current president of Canada? They are business partners. And he did say, Trump did say that he wanted the Canadian president, the one that is now there in office, to win. Right? Yes, Professor Jimmy O'Pear. Yes, and I will try to look for them, Marie Antoinette, and I'll try to see if I can attach it to the video, to this video after the live is finished. That's Jimmy O'Pear's interviews, so you can watch them or rewatch them. Sanpi says guns supplied by the USA. Correct. That's it. The problems we're having in Haiti. I'm not saying now I would be a liar and unfair to say the US has caused all of the chaos in Haiti, but most of it has caused. Whatever chaos is in Haiti, they could live. Just like you have chaos in Jamaica, you have chaos in every countries in the Caribbean countries in general, but we survive because we are chaotic. We are chaotic people, right? But at the same time, sometimes the chaos now becomes unbearable and unmanageable. That's when that's what the United States makes it into, make it become unlivable and unmanageable. And that's the difference. Stephen Knight is saying a lot of folks don't talk about what she did in Haiti. That is taboo. Right. They make a lot of things for her as if, she's talking great and whatever. Yeah, they don't like to talk about, because again, we don't look at Haiti as being equal to us. And I think Professor Pear is right. If we had seen Haiti as an equal state, an equal Caribbean state, we would remember. Why are we protesting against what is happening in Venezuela as much as we are? Because we think Venezuela is equal to us. But if we thought Haiti was equal, an equal Caribbean member state, we would have likewise felt the same. But it's taboo, Stephen Knight, because we have not, ascribed a lot of, what do you call it now, equality or humanity to Haiti. Chaos in most countries become of USA right. Well, we are chaotic, I'm not going to say US was the one who created the chaos, because the British and the French and the Spanish and all these, colonizers started that chaos first, right? But the fact is that we lived with that chaos and we were able to live and to laugh and we're in a zone of peace. But the United States has now, plummeted us into a zone of war, and where the chaos is now going to become unmanageable. We can get together and trade amongst each other, but guess what? That is what we're doing with the Petrocaribe, Annie. That is what we're doing. And every time we begin to do these things, the United States comes in and says something is wrong with that country or whatever, and stop the trade. Right? So let's not make any bones about it. We're actually doing that. Because what some countries would do, like Dominican Republic, they would send like peas, habichuelas to Venezuela for their oil. So that was sort of barter trade, So the fact of the matter is that we were doing that, and that would have been a system to build on, because energy is important, right? So what if we had come together, Trinidad as an energy powerhouse in the world, Venezuela, and all of these other, energy countries, we could have built a region and we wouldn't have to deal with the United States. But every time we attempt to do something like that, the United States divides us and conquers. O. Smith says we can survive under this imperial regime. We just have to move. It's not only one regime. It is an imperial country. And that's what we have to get away. We have to get rid of this. Trump is the only imperial guy, and that the media is telling us. All of them are imperial. If it is Kamala Harris tomorrow, she's going to be imperial. If it is J.D. Vance, whomever comes there, all of them have been imperial. We have just a move of silence. Don't show your hand. Don't be too loud. Hide our buttons. Go back to the maroon. Stay moving. Now, let me ask you something. Do you know the State Department that they send cables every night to the State Department of the United States? So all the American embassies, whether they're in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, in Venezuela, the United States knows every iota of things we do. Do you know that when the IMF went to Jamaica in 2013, that they knew that there was a National Housing Trust in Jamaica, right, that has lots of money. right? And they knew, the amount of money in that trust fund, and was able to say to the Jamaican government, give us some of the money, right? Because they know everything about us. Cables are being sent nightly about every transaction, even things the Prime Minister doesn't know about, gets to the United States. Stephen Knight says, yes, those friends have and have been friends for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in somebody's files. Yeah, they around the world. Welcome back, research. The last queen of Hawaii. Yes, I will research that. What's her name again? And we have Marie Antoinette saying Mark Carney is the president. Correct. He and Trump are friends. And you can do your research on that. You don't have to believe me. They are friends. They Trump's son-in-law, all these guys. In fact, Trump is on record. You can go to YouTube videos or listen to Trump himself. It's not AI now. You listen to Trump himself, where he said he preferred Mark Carney. He wanted Mark Carney to win and not Justin Trudeau. Not Justin Trudeau, the other guy. What's the other guy named? The guy that was on the right. Right. He didn't want him to win. Then we have here, but Venezuela used to give Haiti and Cuba oil at right, not give, but sell. It's not only, but Mia Mottley was not the architect of that oil, right? If that's what you're trying to say. But yes, they would sell oil not only to Haiti and Cuba, but to Jamaica, to Dominica, to a lot of Caribbean, to Dominican Republic, right? Now, Julian is saying, I was hoping that's where we was heading. Where Julian? Where in terms of what? The United States and the European nations do not want Black people to be independent economically. They don't. This is how they keep us as modern day slaves. Absolutely. They don't want us to be independent, because that is why they are after Haiti. Remember now that Haiti was the first free Black republic in the Western Hemisphere that kicked out 3 major empires at the time. They kicked out the French, the Spanish, and the British. In fact, C.L.R. James was the one who said that it was because of, many of us think that it was World War I and World War II that caused the British Empire to have fallen. But according to the Trinidadian scholar C.L.R. James, he said that in the Black Jacobins, you can read that book, the Black Jacobins, he said that it was the Haitian Revolution which weakened the British Empire, because it fought with every strength to have gotten that colony, because it was then the richest colony in the world, right? And Great Britain wanted it, right? Mark Carney, right? He is the current president. He is a friend of Trump, right? So all of this charade and this theater about the Canada's going to become the 51st state and all that stuff. It's just to, make Americans think that there is some sort of conflict between the two powers, and it's theater, comic relief to make us laugh and, and get angry and to divide us. Oh, and we're anti-Trump. But behind the scenes, Trump and all these guys are friends. Okay? Now, you are right. That's why I said we have to find ways to hide whatever wealth and new resources that we have or found. Yeah, how do we hide them? Because another thing too, there is always betrayal in the camp. And that's what we always have to understand. Very few things, unless you're going to live unto yourself, very few things you can hide, particularly in this world. And people, even when you're living unto yourself, if somebody else comes into your rank, somebody is going to betray you. Right? And that is what happened to Maduro, happened to many presidents and kings and queens. Hawaii lost queen name was Laluku. Okay, good. I will research that. Thank you. Around the world. And so in my opinion, to many, to dependent on America's titties, they will sell of us. Yeah, absolutely. That is what they do. They, we have become so dependent, and we think America is heaven, as I'm saying, and the presidents are gods. So anything America says, we want to believe, and we agree with. We don't use our heads or brains to think. right? And that is really what happens, right? That is really what happens. Now, Stephen Knight, I love your interaction. It's keeping me alive, and I like the conversation because you're also teaching me, and this is what we do. We learn from each other. Stephen Knight is saying, as long as you have a central bank that is not run by individuals in your country, and a U.S. embassy is going to be hard to hide those dollars. Absolutely. And then with the fact, was it Stephen Knight? There was an agreement between the Jamaican banks, not only Jamaican banks, the banks in Latin America and the Caribbean, where it was through Obama, which they share information about what they're doing and stuff like that. Um, let me see what I'm saying here. Mr. Pereira was on the Bob report this morning. He starred. Okay. Well, yeah. So we have this Sanpi says, excellent show. Good night, all. Okay, good night, good night, good night. Yeah. Julian is saying, I was hoping the Caribbean islands countries would link up from a even bigger CARICOM and we trade with each other and prosper with our region. We have everything we need. You're correct. But the fact is that, as we're saying, CARICOM seems to have morphed into a different entity controlled by the U.S., so we would have to even found a different, organization because it has morphed into one which is not concerned about the development of the Caribbean. Okay. All right. So I think that we're coming down to our last element now. I think that we've discussed quite a bit. And it was great to have you on the program again. Please make sure that you're liking the live. All right. Don't leave now without liking the live, and you share the live so that others can participate in our discussion and we can have more discussion. Any other comment before we go? But make sure you don't leave before you like the live. Thank you so much. I think that for all of us, it was very informative. And I'm sorry that Mr. Pereira was not able to come on the live. He did promise me that he would have. Yes. And thank you, Julian, and thank you, Wiz. With all of you have made the live informative. Without your help, the live would not have been the same because you are all interactive and you're not just talking to talk. One of the things, you're not just writing to write. And that's one of the things I like about this live and the people who show up. You write thoughtful and very good substantive comments. Right. Thank you so much. Make sure you like it. Please don't leave, ladies and gentlemen, without liking the live so that we can ensure that the YouTube algorithm will be able to send it over, and leave a comment after the live if you can, so that the algorithm will send the video over to as many people on the platform so we can educate our Caribbean and people in the diaspora around the world. Any other question, comment before we go? Thank you so much, Stephen. I enjoyed. We pray for Mr. Maduro and his wife. Yes, and have they separated him? It seems like he's now separated from his wife, and I'm not seeing his wife. I saw when they were leaving to the United States, but afterwards I'm not seeing him and his wife together. Have they separated them? Have you guys read anything, seen any videos? But it seems like they're now separated. They have been separated, and that's very sad that he has been separated from his wife. Yeah, we pray for Maduro. Yeah, I don't see his wife. Gonna have to go back and check. Yeah, the previous videos, find out one about Madame Motley. Yes, I will send it to you after I end the live. I will send the video to you about the Haitian, my interviews with Jimmy Mapere. I think I did 3 interviews with her, and she has always, about any interview that you watch, any interview, let me write her name, Professor Jemima Perry. You can go, not even my videos, but you can watch all the videos that she has recorded. She has always spoken about Miss Mia Motley's influence in that Haitian situation. Yes, like also very educated program. Yes, and this is what we want in the Caribbean. We want people who, all of us, will come together with our education and share our thoughts and our knowledge. They always separate them. It is psychological. Absolutely. That's what they do. Divide and conquer. And that is because that's the only way that they can fight us. Think about it, guys. How are they going to conquer us when they are just one percenters? They're one percenters in the world. How are they going to conquer the 99% if they don't divide us? And that is why even during slavery, they divided us on what? On our shade. Some are browner than some are darker, right? And that's how they divided us. And that's how they conquered us. That's why slavery was there for a long time. Right? The Willie Lynch syndrome. Well, that was what was very important, an important ingredient in having slavery lasting for such a long time. Right? Yes. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Tucker, for another very enlightening session today. And thank you, dear Caribbean family audience. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you for your participation. And I look forward to another live, perhaps next week, Sunday, at the same time. Have a great night, and I'll see you in another live program. Bye.